Chapter 5090. Yanxian, is this still Yanxian? Jian Wushuang, what kind of existence are you? Only bitterness was left in the young master's eyes. It seemed that from the beginning, he hadn't put Jian Wushuang in his eyes. Until the heavenly feast, the first battle to win the peach, Jian Wushuang almost got the final fairy peach with an unrivaled posture, and entered the eyes of all the emperors. From that date, it was only 20,000 years old, and he had grown to an existence that even Gongzi Jiao could not ignore. Jian Wushuang, if you are the emperor's son, how good it would be. The son was stunned. I can give everything that the son can't give you, including the blood of the emperor. At this moment, a timid voice sounded behind him. My lord, do you want to leave with us? The son corrected himself, looked at the immature emperor who was talking, shook his head slightly, and then continued to pay attention to everything that happened in the void. The immature disciple did not dare to stay too much, and hurried to the master Su Tua. We don't have to go anymore. The danger seems to have been resolved. Su Tua slowly got up, looked at the peaceful void, and let out a sigh of relief. Really solved? In the eternal extinguishment of nothingness, Nanxian's chest was violently ups and downs, panting heavily, as if he could not believe that he had solved the black robe. Jian Wushuang's situation was not much better than him, and the moment of release made him almost fall. The black robe's body without any backhand strength made Jian Wushuang feel unbelievable. He didn't believe that the black robe was directly extinguished in this way. Could it be that he will recover as before? He seemed to realize something, and subconsciously looked at the place where the black robe had died. Only then did he discover that the silky dark purple mist had condensed again. Jian Wushuang was shocked, and immediately blasted a great light, trying to completely destroy the mist, but to his surprise, it had no effect. How could this happen? Nanxian also noticed, stepped back, and hurriedly released Yanli to kill. But the silky dark purple haze seems to have the ability to nibble and swallow the power, and the power is not affected at all. With the formation of the vortex, the embryonic form of a body appeared again. That body is the black robe that was bombarded. How is it possible? How can this guy be immortal? Nanxian yelled, then blasted the body like crazy. This time, the reunited black robe didn't seem to be as slow as before. Facing Jian Wushuang and Nanxian, he slowly raised his palm. The broad palm suddenly opened his 5 fingers, blasting out an unimaginable dark purple beam of light. All this happened so fast that Nanxian couldn't avoid it at all, and could only watch his fairy body being penetrated. But the next moment, Jian Wushuang suddenly stood in front of Nanxian. A giant glow burst out, and the boundless potential energy that was enough to destroy any cosmic realm erupted completely in front of Jian Wushuang's chest. Jiutian Xian exudes a bright light, but the dark purple beam of light unexpectedly blasted into the only crack in Jiutian Xian. Jian Wushuang only felt that his chest was broken in an instant, and the peculiar energy directly shattered his fairy body, and the blood spewed out. Tens of thousands of meters of dark purple light penetrated his chest, and appeared in the eternal emptiness. What? All the disciples were shocked and shouted. Su Tua trembled in disbelief. The black robe that had died down reappeared, and the shot directly released the aura of destruction, almost instantly causing Jian Wushuang to fall into a situation of life and death. Gongzi Jiao was also completely shocked. His body moved, his face was in disbelief. The situation that had been almost foregone turned out in an instant. The black robe, like an immortal nightmare, appears again. Divine blood spilled into the void. Jian Wushuang's immortal body was completely shattered, and fell back into Nanxian's arms. Hurry up. He tried hard to speak to Nanxian with the last trace of strength. Nanxian nodded vigorously, then desperately held Jian Wushuang to flee. This time, the black robe was no longer as dull as before, and when he noticed that they were running away, he immediately followed. Boom! The dark purple light beam exploded in the dying void. Nanxian was able to escape, but he had no power to fight again. He embraced Jian Wushuang, and couldn't escape the black robe's pursuit. Facing Nanxian, who was fleeing in a panic, Hypo raised his palm again, and in an instant, thousands of dark purple rays of light turned into a big net covering the sky. The entire void of nihilism is almost covered, and Nanxian is inevitable. The sun frowned and frowned. He had been hunted down by this situation before. If Jian Wushuang hadn't helped him, he would have disappeared. At the moment, if there is no help from outside, Nanxian and Jian Wushuang will never escape. He was hesitating and seemed to be doing some kind of struggle inside. In the end, he didn't help, but tilted his head to the other side. Facing the dense net that covered the sky, even if Nanxian was unwilling, he was unable to return to the sky. The next moment, but the sudden change. With the only remaining sacred mountain and Swordsman Mountain as the center, a mysterious black enchantment that can cover the sky and sun suddenly appears in. This black enchantment directly covered Nanxian's figure, and the dense net that covered the sky followed closely, but slammed into the barrier, and then crashed. Nanxian was shocked, but before he had time to think about it, he directly held Jian Wushuang and landed on the top of the sacred mountain of Swordsman Mountain. A group of disciples hurriedly lifted Jian Wushuang up and placed them on by his generous and kind back. "Little friend, he will be fine. You guys go quickly, here I will withstand it," Nanxian said with a trembling, and then stuffed the last emperor pin pill in his arms into Jian Wushuang's mouth. Seeing this scene, Gongzi Jiao's expression changed again and again. He understood that if he didn't leave now, he couldn't leave even if he wanted to leave later. Outside the black and black barrier, the black robe was attacking frantically. Under his crazy offensive, the barrier was already full of cracks. When the sun saw it, he was ready to leave. Almost at the same time, a voice with supreme anger resounded. "It's really annoying, it makes the old man dead and uneasy." The craftsman Su Tua was startled, and then his eyes rounded to the extreme, as if he had witnessed something impossible. The whole sacred mountain began to tremble violently, as if the supreme Li Tian Dao was born. Then there was the pure sound of swords that drew 9 heavens forever, and was breathtaking. With this black enchantment as the center, an unimaginable shadow descended. He was wearing a black robe, with real anger in his true eyes, as if he was crushing the ages like a sword, sharp to the extreme. He is above the 9th rank Dayan Immortal, and is the peak Dayan Immortal. At the same time, he is also a sword spirit. Chapter 5091. Only when weapons have souls and long swords have spirits can they lead to a deeper realm. And the sword spirit, that can grow into the pinnacle Dian Immortal, is the only one who rests in the sword grave of Swordsman Mountain. He, who had been inevitably declining, unexpectedly reappeared at this moment, and with an endless momentum, he directly crushed the black robe. The mysterious black barrier shattered, and the black-robed old man as a sword spirit waved his hand and patted the black robe heavily. In an instant, it was like a mountain and a sea of dust disappearing forever. The supreme palm directly smashed the black robe into powder. Long support as strong as rank 9 Dian Immortal. Even broken Xianyuan did not erase the black robe. But at this moment, the black robe was slapped and turned into powder. This scene made all the disciples of Sankunshin, including Jian Wuxia who had just awakened, and Gongzi Jiao widen their eyes. Crush kill in seconds. It was like the black robe of an immortal nightmare, but was drawn directly into powder at this moment, which made Jian Wuxia incredulous. But things did happen, and the black robe once again became a fan. Humph! The unimaginable phantom snorted coldly, then stood with his hand held, turned and walked towards the sacred mountain of Swordsman Mountain. With each step, the huge phantom shrank, until it reached the Swordsman Mountain. It had become a normal figure. Nan Xian was so shocked that he couldn't speak, watching him stammered. Aren't you gone? As soon as he said this, all the disciples, including Gongzi Jiao, changed their expressions and did not dare to breathe. You must know that this is the supreme and powerful person who can slap a black robe to death. If you say this, you will inevitably become angry. However, the horrible scene in the imagination did not appear, and the black-robed old man was a little annoyed. I wanted to die directly, but the outside world was so shocked that I couldn't bear it. Then I came back to life and killed the guy. That's it. Nan Xian's mouth twitched. Fortunately you wake up, otherwise you won't see us. Just such a small bug turned this place upside down. The black-robed old man deplored his unsatisfactory expression. Is to see you already weakened to this point. All the disciples did not dare to speak, and Jian Wuxia, who had recovered from his near death, laughed bitterly at the words. Hugh said that they couldn't do it, even if it was also the long support from the Wangu era. It ended up tragically. After a grievance, the black-robed old man noticed Jian Wuxia, who was in the body, and hurriedly walked towards him. Little friend, what did you do? Jian Wuxia smiled bitterly when he heard the words. Let the predecessors read the joke. The kid is invincible. Hearing this, the black-robed old man glared. You are an immortal. Although you are invincible, you are still moving forward. With the old man's posture in the past, these few rats with hidden heads and exposed tails, why dare not to step forward? After he finished speaking, he looked directly at Su Tua, Nan Xian and young Master Jiao. The young man took a few steps back subconsciously. He didn't dare to say that the aura exuded by the black-robed old man was too domineering, making everyone who heard it silent. At the same time, he felt a very familiar aura in the black-robed old man. But he did not act rashly, but chose to silence. Nan Xian quickly explained. Don't look at me. I have been fighting side by side with my little friend from beginning to end. The black-robed old man snorted angrily, and then looked at Su Tua. Little guy, come and explain to the old man why the little friend alone was hit hard. What did you eat? Su Tua was dumb, and then smiled bitterly. Master you have to know that even if we were tied together before, it would never hurt the black robe at all. Just not long ago, a 9th-rank Great Yin Immortal was lost here. Hearing this, the black-robed old man was shocked. How could it be possible for the 9th-rank Dian Immortal? Jian Wuxia opened his mouth and said in a condensed voice. Senior, that's true. The fallen 9th-rank Great Yin Immortal is named Chang Fu. The black-robed old man said in disbelief. Chang Fu, that dumb little guy? All Yangtzeans twitch at the corners of their mouths, and can call a strong person, who has come out of the ancient times, as a dumb little guy. How much qualifications and background do they need? And it seemed that the old man in black robe had already known Chang Fu a long time ago. It's a pity that this honest little guy survived the catastrophe, but he didn't expect to be buried in this unknown place. The black-robed old man seemed a little confused, causing melancholy. The galaxy turns, after all it is endless. The so-called immortality, from the moment of proving the Tao and gaining the Tao, there is absolutely no possibility of a good death. Even the Nineth-ranked Dayan Immortal, or even the peak Dayan Immortal, rarely ends well. They are already above the Tao of Heaven, and they can even modify any Tao of Heaven at will. For them, the fate is already endless. The endless fate is like a cage. Let all the immortals sink in it. What can't be restrained by the fate of heaven, is it not a cage of its own? Hypo said slowly. Well, the little guy left, and the old man has found revenge for him, so he can close his eyes. Since there is nothing more to do here, the old man went on to die. Jian Wushuang and the others shot again. This old man in black robes, whose origin is a sword spirit, seems to always be so independent and free and easy to do things. He went out to kill the black robe directly, and then he continued to prepare for his death. Little guy, never see you again. The black robe old man looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Senior, cherish it. Jian Wushuang solemnly arched his hands. At this moment young Master Jiao, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly said, This senior, we seem to have seen him. The black-robed old man turned around and looked at the son with some doubts. Are you? The son Jiao smiled slightly, then arched his hands. This seat. The junior is the emperor under the true Wuyang seat. The emperor under the seat of Emperor Zhen Wuyang? The black-robed old man suddenly looked very excited. The galaxy has changed, and many Chinese have not seen you. Yenner, you have grown so big? The old man hugged you personally. Wait, Yenner. The young master's expression of complacency still froze on his face, and he realized that the black-robe old man seemed to have admitted the wrong person. Seeing his expression like a throat, Jian Wushuang couldn't help showing a smile. Reluctantly squeezing out a stiff smile, young master said, Going back to senior, this seat is not young Master Yen, but young Master Second Emperor. This time, it was his turn to be embarrassed by the black-robe old man. He stopped on the spot and narrowed his eyes. Oh, I am confused and confused. The old man's eyes are clumsy, and he can't distinguish between the emperor and the second emperor. Don't blame it. The son twitched the corners of his mouth, and could only signal that there was nothing wrong. Chapter 5092. But then, the black-robed old man continued without knowing it. Let me ask the second emperor. How is the great emperor now? Gong Zizhou's face almost became the bottom of a black pot, and the corners of his mouth twitched constantly. He said in a tone of almost gritted teeth, "Very, very good." Hearing this, the old man in black robe laughed. It's so good, it's so good. Since the emperor's son is innocent, the old man can leave without worry. No, you can't go, senior, he hurriedly said. Changfu was once the elder under the seat given to me by the emperor, and now he has died in order to protect me, and there is no elder by my side. So please seniors to become my elders. After the prince had finished correcting the words, he sincerely looked at the black-robed old man. Jian Wuxuang squinted his eyes slightly. After talking so much, and going around such a big circle, he originally wanted the black-robed old man to replace Chang Fu and become the elder under his seat. It has to be said that Gong Zizhou does have a certain degree of city government and courage, and can obtain identification with his identity in an extremely passive situation. I am afraid that the black-robed old man will eventually become his elder. For a while, Jian Wuxuang faintly worried. If the black-robed old man joins the camp of young Master Jiao, I am afraid that the battle between the emperor and the son will be even more terrible. He would never forget that the alliance of emperors and sons, headed by Gong Zizhou, had almost wiped out Xiaodigen. Just when Jian Wuxuang was suspicious, the black-robed old man spoke and said in a calm voice, Second Emperor, forgive the old man for his life. After that ancient catastrophe, the old man has irretrievably declined. Being able to exist is unimaginable, so the old man can't stay by your side. The son was startled, apparently unaware that the black-robed old man would refuse so simply. He hurriedly bowed his hands in a salute. Please also seniors must agree. The emperor's salute is unthinkable in the big division domain, and the black-robed old man has an inextricable relationship with Jin Wuyang Emperor, and it is almost impossible not to agree. However, the ceremony did not go on. The black-robed old man directly stretched out his hand and waved the son to straighten his figure. Then he said quite solemnly, the emperor should have the prestige of the emperor, and the place where the heaven is located, except for the emperor, does not need to give courtesy. The old man is indeed declining irretrievably, and cannot assist any emperor. Please do not read the second emperor. Gong Zizhou still wanted to say something, but the black-robed old man no longer gave him a chance to speak. He turned around and walked towards Jian Wuxuang, and said in a voice that only they could hear, If the little friend can see Yu Chang again, tell him that the old friend is gone, don't read it. Also, let him find time to find another sword. No sword will not work after all. When Jian Wuxuang heard this, a light flashed in his eyes. Until then, he didn't know that he had made a mistake, including Gong Zizhou. That is, the old man in black robe was once Zhen Wuyang's right-hand man. It turns out that he is not. And Jian Wuxuang also realized at this time that Yu Chang also used a sword, but his Maching long sword was condensed by air. And it was almost the same as Jian Wuxuang's invisible sword. The reason Jian Wuxuang used the invisible sword was because his Tailuo divine sword was destroyed, and there was no sword that could carry Wuxuang's sword. And Yu Chang also used the invisible sword. It must be because the long sword was destroyed. As the true peak of the great emperor, the black-robed old man who is also a sword spirit, he must be a supreme sword that is beyond bondage. And besides Zhen Wuyang, only Yu Chang could be worthy of this sword. A vast domain, a domain with two emperors. Such a secret thing. I am afraid that apart from those veterans who survived the war of Wanggu era, only Jian Wuxuang knew. Yu Chang is also an emperor. This sounds incredible, but it is true. And the black-robed old man, who is the pinnacle Dayan immortal, is indeed qualified to be called the Emperor Sword. Only Yu Chang is qualified to be his master. This can be seen in the black-robed old man calling himself Yu, and the gift of Jian Wuxuang with an inscribed Mo Qing Lingjing. After saying this, the old man in black robe smiled warmly, and reached out and tapped on his wrist. Jian Wuxuang understood it, and subconsciously looked at his wrist. There, wearing a simple and powerful sea bracelet. Bracelet, is it related to Uncle Yu? He shook his head for a moment. The memory from the borderless sea to the upper-facing heavenly court has been fragmented. Jian Wushuang can't recall any clues that have memories at all, and naturally can't know the origin of this Songhai bracelet. Well, the matter is over. The old man will wait for death. The black-robed old man laughed, and then he was about to leave. But at this time, Jian was double-face color changed, and then he looked at him with a wry smile. I'm afraid, Senior, can't leave yet. That guy has appeared again. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the master craftsman Su Tua and Nan Xian suddenly changed, and they almost said in the same way, how is it possible? 3 times, it really died out 3 times, but all 3 times recovered again. This is beyond imagination, and is a fundamentally impossible thing. Even if it is Jian Wushuang, felt a deep sense of powerlessness for the black robe that came out of the bone armor of the sky. Is he really immortal? Immortality is immortal. This concept is too terrifying, almost impossible to exist. Even Jian Wushuang's immortal body could not be resurrected in such a short time as Black Robe. But Hypo did it. Even in the hands of Pinnacle Dian Immortal, he survived and resurrected. The black-robed old man obviously hadn't thought about this situation either, and his brow was slightly frowned. You wait, I'll kill him completely. After he finished speaking, his figure swept directly into the void of vanity. The unparalleled sound Mang trembles, making the dying and nothingness turbulent. The mighty power belonging to the Pinnacle Dian Immortal fully emerged at this moment. The black robe was still resurrected at the place where it had previously been destroyed, and the dark purple brilliance burst out from under the wide black robe. Court death! The black-robed old man snorted angrily, and the giant sound radiated 9 times. Then one party covered the sky with a big palm facing the black robe. At this moment, Tiandao was trembling. Hypo seemed to feel something, and looked up at the void. He finally stopped being indifferent, and directly reached out to fight. The huge amount of dark purple light beam seemed to be enough to divide the void into 2, carrying the boundless force into the void. The big palm covering the sky condensed from the order of the heavens, and the great avenue of the ages came down. The 2 collided, an immense explosion exploded, and the terrible death blast trembled to 9 days and 10 places. On the top of Sansuan Mountain's only sacred mountain, Jian Wushuang stared at this scene. Then he released his own power without any hesitation, and enveloped the entire sacred mountain under the barrier. Chapter 5093. In this barrier, all the disciples looked at Jian Wushuang nervously. Before they knew it, they had pinned their hopes on this young man Yanxian. Seeing the back of Jian Wushuang, who released the strength to stabilize the enchantment, Gong Zijiu's eyes were cold and resentful. He didn't understand why the strongest would have good ties with Jian Wushuang. It would be fine if it was Yanxian, but it happened that Dianxian appeared endlessly beside him. Even rank 6 and rank 9 Dianxian could mix with him. Damn it, how did this guy do it? The sun was almost mad with jealousy, centered on the black robe bound by the entanglement. This seat will stomp you on your feet one day. Of heavenly order broke out at the same time. Palm covering the sky covered by the black chain of heaven order no longer is the full blow of the black light and shadow shattered. The 999 covering the sky was also directly divided. 990 the dark purple bizarre huamang craziness that becomes eternal and the way of heaven is therefore discolored. It was actually a blow from the black robe that belonged to the Pink Dian immortal broke out covering the sky shattered into billions that was entangled in the body into the void and couldn't get out of it. The black robe to shatter directly under the suppression of this airlock that had just recovered seemed to be stronger. The body of the black robe couldn't bear so many chain lashes of the order damage to the black robe, and which made him begin to solemnly. The black robe elder man who came to the black robe at this moment, since the ancient times, also as if he had noticed something very different, and he said directly, he couldn't feel the flow of any derivative force from the body of the black robe, the remnants of the heavens from the past. Wave of derivative force. The black robe did not speak. This makes the black robe and the body under the wide black robe. Yanli is the fundamental power of the entire black robed old man narrowed his eyes. Even the ultimate evangelism, and he realized that even he couldn't see the face under the black robe get rid of the evangelical power from beginning to end. Even for the emperor, he was extremely secretive. But right now, the black robe completely did not drive the black robe old man. The dark purple huamang he used this time, extremely peculiar, slowly raised his head and looked different from Yanli at such a close distance. For a while, he couldn't see the face under his hood. Thoughts. Only the dark purple forgotten, which was the danger of living is worth thinking about. While the danger of the bone armor is not called character pattern, the void and whose identity is all and the heavenly order shattered again. The black-robed old man seemed to be separated by countless years and he stretched out his right palm and pointed like a sword. The black-robed old man condensed his brows like the immortal black robe. Ciphertext say? It seemed to be more agile than before. Facing the supremely powerful black-robed old man, he suddenly raised his head. He actually knew how to avoid his edge. The black-robed old man. At the same time, shot out from under the hood like long swords, who was standing on the top of the sacred mountain watching the black-robed old man looked at the black robe solemnly, and there was a moment of dazzling. He noticed that the black robe seemed to be adapting under the black robe, and at the same time stronger than before. Like a sword. Could it be that without touching the black robe old man's chest fiercely through the chains of heavenly order? Jian Wushuang was thinking in an instant, and at the same time faintly worried about heaven's order broke down. The reason why he has been talking about death-seeking Senior is most likely Jian Wushuang yelled that the situation of the black robe old man without really hesitation, the end of the force, being penetrated by this premise chest. Even if the black robe old man was broken at this moment, he is very likely to fall into a passive sword enveloping the red in the void of eternal extinguishment and nothingness. A more violent battle broke out. And as a black-robed old man sword is already at the peak of the ancient times. At this moment, his background even the monstrous dark purple haze he can wave his hand at will. Boom! And he can create the blazing invisible sword also pierced the chest of the black robe from the heavens, and the purest like a broken ancient dragon exploded emerged from the void and twisted toward the black robe, which was already densely covered with hesitations about the chains of heavenly order. This degree of fluctuation, and he can't avoid it at all. And it was broken into powder. Instantly entangled in it. Jian Wushuang didn't even look at the place where the black robe body fell. Every chain of the heavenly order trembles at this moment, man who was falling. And a series of dark cyan dense patterns appear. The black-robed old man looked pale, and his supreme luck quickly disappeared from his broken chest. He said in a hoarse voice, "The situation seems to be a little uncomfortable, and now my chest pain is a bit severe." Chapter 5094. Although Jian Wushuang was anxious, he quickly calmed down. He fixed his eyes, and in front of the broken chest of the black-robed old man, there was a lingering dark purple brilliance flowing slowly. Under his thoughts, Jian Wushuang quickly took out 2 D-pin pills. One was stuffed into the mouth of the black-robed old man, and the other was crushed directly to the wound. At the entrance of the pill, the black-robed old man stared suddenly, which belonged solely to the power of the Emperor Pin pill, which was so powerful that it could not be vainly stated. Even the pinnacle Dian Immortal was enough to fully recover. At the entrance of the pill, Feeling the extremely powerful medicinal effect, the black-robed old man quickly closed his eyes and began to adjust his breath. But Jian Wushuang didn't dare to neglect, and stretched out his hand to pull out the smog and dust that covered the wound. Nanha craftsman Su Tua and others also rushed to release Yanli together to protect the black-robed old man. Time passed by, and his trauma slowly stabilized. Finally, the black-robed old man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang with bright eyes. Then excitedly said with a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Good boy, where did you get this pill? How can it taste the same as the old man stealing it back then?" Jian Wushuang was full of black lines, a little messy. He never thought that the first thing the black-robed old man would wake up was actually saying this. Immediately afterwards, the black-robed old man looked proud again. "Good boy, it seems that you have given the old guy's nest." The corners of his mouth twitched. "Senior, it seems you don't hurt anymore." Speaking of this, the black-robed old man is considered a serious face. "The pain doesn't hurt anymore, but that guy pushed me one more step toward death." Jian Wushuang knew that his words were true, and he was inevitably declining, because his luck was too severe, and could not be condensed at all, and could only be released. Coupled with this battle, it pushed the black-robed old man to his death. Well, now that this matter is over, the old man will continue to wait for death. The black-robed old man uttered his mantra and completely put aside life and death. However, just as his words fell, his complexion suddenly changed, and his gaze also looked into the sky far away. "No, that group of guys are here too." Jian Wushuang instantly became vigilant, but before he could speak, the black-robed old man hurriedly roared, "Little guy, what about the spar I gave you earlier? Run out and let the old man go in and hide." Jian Wushuang did so, and after taking out the black diamond crystal from the boyang bottle, the black-robed old man plunged directly into it and disappeared. He was wary and wondering, who was the one who would make the black-robed old man so jealous? In the next moment, from the depths of the endless void, a magnificent and supreme luck appeared, covering the sky. These lucks are not just one, but there are dozens of them. "Come back!" Nan Xian was about to be tossed feebly. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly, and he felt the magnificent luck that covered the sky, and he did not carry any horrible killing intent. He thought to himself, could it be someone from heaven? It seems to be to confirm his conjecture. A total of 10 roads carrying the light wheels of Yanli, carrying the treasures of supreme luck, stepped into the air. Really come from heaven? Jian Wushuang frowned, and soon realized that it must have been the aura of destruction emanating from the sky that had disturbed the heavenly court. So he sent the veteran to investigate. But in a short while the 10 treasures came here. Their faces are majestic, full of photographs. With their arrival, the unspeakable order of heaven was reconstructed, becoming an eternal void of nothingness, and beginning to stabilize. Everyone is careful. These people are all celestial elders. The craftsman Su Tua reminded in a low voice, his eyes solemn. So this is the veteran of heavenly court. Nan Xian whispered thoughtfully, and Gongzi Jiao was completely relieved. As the son of the emperor, there is no elder who is closer to the heavens than him. Headed by the 10 treasures, is a glaring figure, clean face without need and full of cold breath. He took a step forward, his gaze slowly swept across Jian Wushuang and the others, and after staying on the figures of Jian Wushuang and Gongzi Jiao for a moment, he withdrew his gaze again. Who did it here? Angrily asked in a cold voice. Unimaginable oppression followed. Rank 9 Dian Immortal. Jian Wushuang first determined that these veterans who have survived from the Wanggu era to the present are all 9th rank Dian Immortal, and there is even a pinnacle Dian Immortal. In the face of these terrible existences, wanting to resist is sheer nonsense. At this moment all were silent. The cause of this devastation was too complicated. The black robe of the initiator had completely disappeared, and it was impossible to dialectically. What's more, the heavenly court is not a good person, and if it causes such damage to devotion, it may be restrained by the heavenly court. This was Jian Wushuang's worry, so he didn't intend to speak. And Nan Xian also shook his head and looked around, with an unaware expression. The craftsman Su Tua also gritted his teeth and remained silent. He knew that such terrible damage had been caused to the heavens. Once found by the heavens, Yu Kanshu www. Akanshu, Calm would inevitably be exiled to a deserted place for years. At this time, the son who had not spoken to correct took a step forward slowly. Jinyao Xianjunai. Without finishing a sentence, the angry figure called Jinyao Xianjun directly interrupted him and said coldly, "Your Highness, did I let you speak?" The son suppressed the sound, his face turned blue and red, the anger in his eyes flashed away, and then he returned to the original place. Xianjun Jinyao continued to patrol, and finally stopped on Jian Wushuang, who was watching his nose and his heart. "Jian Wushuang, tell me what's going on here." Jian Wushuang's figure stiffened slightly, rather helpless. He didn't know why this Jinyao Xianjun knew his name, but he could faintly guess some of the connections. After pondering for a while, he said, "I originally came here with my companions to experience and visit the senior master craftsman by the way, but some unexpected big changes have taken place. An evil object suddenly arrived here and began to wreak havoc, and it was quickly destroyed. In order to prevent the world from being destroyed, the senior master craftsman and I took action together and began to resist the evil object. But the evil thing is too cruel. We are not his opponents at all." Just when we are all invincible and are about to die, the evil thing suddenly fled from here. And just after that, you are here. Now that I think about it, the evil thing suddenly fled. It must be because of fear of the supreme luck of the immortals, and thus quickly fled. After speaking, Jian Wushuang sighed in relief. With these words, while dripping water, he slapped another wave of flattery from the celestial elders, which made Nan Xian a thumbs up in secret. Chapter 5095 Guardian of the Secret Text. In this realm, all disciples watched Jian Wushuang with intense anticipation. Unbeknownst to them, they had already placed all their hopes on this young yin immortal. As they watched Jian Wushuang stabilize the barrier with his yin power, Prince Jiu's gaze grew cold and resentful. He could not understand why the most powerful individuals were all friendly with Jian Wushuang. If it were just yin immortal, it would be one thing. But even 6 and 9 revolutions grand yin immortals seemed to flock to him. Damn it, how did this guy manage to do it? Prince Jiu was consumed by jealousy. Jian Wushuang, don't get too cocky. One day, I'll crush you beneath my feet. This time, the all-encompassing palm that descended from the black-robed elder failed to have the same effect. With shattered light and shattered shadows, the palm was directly dispersed. A strange, dark purple radiance aggressively consumed the yin immortal power, and even defied the heavens, withstanding the black-robed elder's attack. As the sky-breaking palm shattered into countless streams of light in the void, the black-robed elder looked puzzled. The previously weakened black-robed figure now seemed even more formidable. Their first confrontation hadn't inflicted any significant damage on the black-robed figure, causing the elder to grow wary. The black-robed elder, who had experienced countless battles since the ancient era, now sensed something entirely different about the black-robed figure. He could not sense any flow of yin immortal power from the black-robed figure, not even the slightest ripple of it. This left the black-robed elder extremely perplexed. Yin power was the fundamental force of the entire Great Sea region, even the ultimate force of the grand yin immortal realm. No cultivator, not even emperors, could escape the influence of yin power, let alone yin immortals. But now, this black-robed figure appeared to have completely and utterly avoided using yin power. The strange dark purple radiance he emitted was unique and fundamentally distinct from yin immortal power. For a moment, the black-robed elder entertained many thoughts, but he quickly pushed them aside. There was only value in contemplating when one was in danger of losing their life, and there was no danger in death. The void trembled, and the order of the heavens shattered once more. The black-robed elder moved through the air, extending his right palm with finger-like blades, striking toward the black-robed figure. The seemingly indestructible black-robed figure appeared even more agile than before. Faced with the supremely powerful black-robed elder, he somehow managed to avoid the full force of the attack. The fierce battle raged on. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who stood atop the divine mountain, gazed intently at the figure in the black-robed figure. He could sense that the black-robed figure was adapting to the surroundings and growing even stronger than before. Could it be that without touching the source, each death makes one stronger? Jian Wushuang pondered out loud, all the while harboring concerns for the old man in the black-robed figure. The old man's constant mention of seeking death may very well have indicated that the condition of his immortal body had truly reached its last stand. In this situation, even if the black-robed elder was a peak grand yin immortal, he might find himself at a disadvantage. A more intense battle erupted within the eternal void, becoming a relentless clash. The black-robed elder, who had been a peak grand yin immortal since ancient times, possessed an unfathomable foundation. He could casually conjure thousands of chains of heavenly Tao with a mere wave of his hand. Countless chains of heavenly Tao, resembling ancient colossal dragons, emerged from the void and entwined around the black-robed figure. There were simply too many of these chains of heavenly Tao for him to avoid, and in an instant, he found himself ensnared by them. Buzz! A resounding roar echoed through the ancient heavens, and in that moment, each chain of celestial order trembled, giving rise to intricate ink blue patterns. At this moment, with the black-robed figure at its center, 999 chains of heavenly Tao simultaneously erupted with unparalleled force. The destiny contained within each chain of celestial order was equivalent to the black-robed elder's full-powered strike. 999 chains of heavenly Tao meant 999 full-powered strikes. Even the eternal void of endless annihilation was perturbed by this. The unparalleled fate energy of a peak grand yin immortal erupted completely, and the black-robed figure, bound and unable to escape, began to shatter under the crushing force of this fate energy. It was quite evident that the body beneath the black-robed figure couldn't withstand the relentless lashings of the heavenly order chains, rapidly developing fine cracks. At this moment, the old man in the black-robed figure arrived in front of the black-robed figure. His expression grew solemn, as if he had sensed something. He spoke directly. "You don't belong to the Great Sea region. Who are you really, and what is your origin? A remnant of the ancient heavenly court?" The black-robed figure remained silent, and it seemed that their body under the wide black-robed figure was on the verge of breaking apart at any moment. The old man in the black-robed figure narrowed his eyes. He could not even see the face beneath the hood, not even when it was himself attempting to do so. Throughout, this figure remained enigmatic to the extreme. "Who are you really?" the old man repeated. This time, the black-robed figure slowly raised their head to gaze at him. Even at such close proximity, their face beneath the hood remained hidden. All that could be seen was layer upon layer of dark purple mist, which was rather peculiar. Finally, the black-robed figure, who emerged from the heaven-patterned bone armor, and whose identity was shrouded in mystery, spoke. Their hoarse voice seemed to have traversed countless ages and eras. "One who gazes upon the secret text shall perish." The black-robed elder furrowed his brow. "What secret text? Speak." "One who gazes upon the secret text shall perish." The phrase was repeated once more, and the figure suddenly raised their head, locking eyes with the old man in the black-robed figure. Two jet-black rays shot out from beneath the hood like elongated swords. Caught off guard, the old man momentarily lost focus as they stared back. In that very moment, a sword-like purple radiance burst forth from beneath the black-robed figure and pierced the old man's chest. In an instant, the 999 heavenly Tao chains shattered, and the fate energy vanished rapidly. "Senior!" Jian Wushuang shouted, without any hesitation, as he lunged toward the old man in the black-robed figure. Even the chest of a peak grand yin immortal like the old man was shattered by the purple radiance. "You seek death." The invisible sword, enveloped in blazing golden divine patterns, had already materialized, and Jian Wushuang, with his feet suspended in the void, hurled the invisible sword towards the black-robed figure. At this moment, even the overwhelming dark purple mist retreated. Boom! The incandescent, burning invisible sword also pierced through the black-robed figure's chest, and the purest form of the Wushuang sword Tao erupted within. The already heavily cracked black-robed figure couldn't withstand such an impact, and it shattered into fragments. Jian Wushuang did not look at where the black-robed figure had fallen. He raised his hand and caught the falling old man. "Senior, are you all right?" The black-robed elder's face turned pale, and the supreme fate energy quickly dissipated from his shattered chest. In a hoarse voice he said, "The situation seems a bit dire. My chest is hurting quite badly now." Chapter 5096. Jian Wushuang nodded his head hurriedly. I also ask Xianjun to take action as soon as possible. This evil thing is too shocking to the world. In order to prevent future troubles, please do it quickly. Destroy. The old man can't be killed naturally. He has to be caught alive and handed over to the emperor. Zhenyao Xianjun made a decision and then looked at the black robe again. Confused. Jian Wushuang shook his head, but he could no longer attract the attention of the veterans. Facing the black robe, the 10 Wangu veterans who walked out of the heavenly court released their own treasures. 10 veterans of the ancient times, 10 nine-turn great yin xian, boundless luck directly in the nirvana, forming the supreme luck. This kind of luck is even beyond the scope of comprehension. Even Dian Immortal is like dust under this kind of supreme luck. Emperor's luck? Jian Wushuang was startled slightly. Looking at the sky-covering luck, he quickly understood. The reason why this kind of supreme luck is extremely terrifying is because there is the flow of Emperor's luck in it. The so-called Emperor's luck is the supreme thing, flowing in all things invisible. Only the Emperor can control. As the elders and immortals who have followed the Emperor since the ancient times, although they cannot control the Emperor's luck, they often accompany the Emperor's side, and they will naturally be moistened by the Emperor's luck. After endless years, the luck of these elders and immortals naturally carried more or less the luck of emperors. Under this supreme atmosphere, all immortals tremble. There was the birth of the Qi luck that was pressing against the heavenly Tao, turning into branches and tangling around the black robe. It is foreseeable that once war starts, it will inevitably be even more tragic and terrifying. Jian Wushuang swallowed his throat and subconsciously shifted his figure. If it were to go to war, he would be tied into a zongzi, he would never escape. Evil thing, put your hands together. Zhenyao Xianjun said loudly, trembling through the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Under the boundless atmosphere, the black robe slowly recovered, and he seemed to adapt to this suppression quickly. Then from under the wide hood, 2 dark purple lights suddenly appeared, looking for death. Immortal King Zhenyao was angry and waved to cover him down. Void shocks, along with his shot. The other 9 veterans also shot together. The huge palms of the 10 directions that contain the meaning of supremacy came down. Facing these 10 giant palms, the black robe was alone, lonely and treacherous, and did not make any escape movements. He slowly raised his head, then his arms were in a gesture of supporting the sky, and he chose a hard shake. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, even the nirvana trembling to the point of unspeakable, and Jian Wushuang and others were knocked into the air by the sound wave, retreating thousands of feet. The boundless Qi luck faded in an instant, and the branches of Qi luck shattered. Okay. All the elders, Xianjun, were asking questions, and after a glance he stared at the black robe. Under the boundless and supreme luck, the giant palms of the 10 directions that contain the meaning of supremacy did not cover it, but were abruptly caught by the black robe. The 10 big palms with light golden aura cracked fine cracks. At the cracks, wisps of dark purple huamang like mist were covered. Zhenyao Xianjun looked dignified. He looked at the other 9 veterans, and then squeezed his right hand again and suddenly patted the black robe. The 9 veterans Xianjun didn't hesitate, and also slapped it. The 10-sided giant palm, which had been densely covered with cracks, seemed to have received some kind of blessing. The cracks were instantly repaired, and bright golden glow appeared. Under the giant palms of the 10 directions, the black robe, which was holding the sky, could not bear the weight, and instantly fell apart, and his body was crushed. Zhenyao Xianjun said in a deep voice, "You guys need to stay alive." The 9 veteran immortals simultaneously retracted their strength, and stood with their hands behind them. Immediately afterwards, Zhenyao Xianjun jumped to the center of the boundless luck. His arms were broken, and the black robe sat on the ground, resisting the terrifying pressure brought by the luck. He frowned and said, "Who are you? Why do you want to destroy the sky?" He Pao said nothing, but slowly raised his head, shooting 2 cold glows from under the wide hood. Xianjun Zhenyao was slightly startled, and he couldn't see the face under the black robe from his realm. The one who looks at the ciphertext die. It was that sentence again. The black robe repeated, and then fell silent. Who is watching the ciphertext? Jinyao Xianjun continued to ask, but no matter how he asked, the black robe fell silent and said nothing. For some reason, subconsciously, he turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was thousands of feet away. Jian Wushuang, who was struggling to untie the chains of the heavenly order on his body, hurriedly calmed down when he felt the gaze coming from him, and continued to observe his nose and heart. It must be the trouble caused by this kid, Jinyao Xianjun thought to himself, and then put aside these problems for the time being. Seeing this black robe that could even shake the 10 veteran Xianjun, Jinyao Xianjun didn't have the slightest support. He waved his arm, and suddenly the boundless luck began to condense into chains. There are 10 chains in total, and each chain is formed by the luck of a veteran, Xianjun, and binds the black robe together. Then Jinyao Xianjun took out a small cauldron from his waist, and took the black robe directly into the cauldron. After all this was done, the void resumed its final state of nihilism. After looking back at Jian Wushuang, Jinyao Xianjun looked ahead, back to heaven. The fairy cloud shrouded, and the force flowed and rose. Because it is so pure that it becomes a liquid source of derivation, it converges to become a torrent waterfall flowing in the fairy mountain sky stream. The cycle goes back and forth endlessly. This is the supreme wonderland, that one party can't speak arrogantly or look directly at it. Hidden in the misty clouds, Xiaoyantai has never been stepped by the emperor for hundreds of millions of years. It is a relatively secret place in the whole heaven. At this moment, on the calm platform, in the misty clouds, Jian Wushuang, who was tied into a zongzi by the order of heaven, said helplessly, "What are you talking about? I just don't understand." "Really don't understand?" Jinyao Xianjun squatted in front of him, and said with a smile. Jian Wushuang said firmly, "I really don't understand. Even if you throw me into the sea of no edge, I still don't know what happened. And there is no result if you ask again." "Good boy, you still don't speak at this time. Do you really want the emperor to speak in person?" A veteran with black eyebrows and white beards couldn't help but persuade him. "Explain as soon as possible. Destroy the universe to that extent. The consequences would be disastrous." Jian Wushuang hurriedly said, "Don't talk nonsense. I really didn't destroy that great sky. You have seen who destroyed it. You can confront him." "You." The elder Xianjun with black eyebrows and white beards was suddenly angry and didn't know what to say. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5097. Looking at Jian Wushuang, who was unable to make progress. Even Jinyao Xianjun was quite a headache. If you don't eat the soft ones, you can't come with the hard ones. If you want to know some secrets, I'm afraid you have to dig from other Yanxian. Thinking of this, Jinyao Xianjun looked at the craftsman Su Tuo and said, "Old man, you should always know something, right?" Su Tuo shook his head without hesitation. "Everything happened too fast. Even if I want to know something, it's too late." Jinyao Xianjun offered a condition. "You speak out, and I will ask the emperor to return you a heaven that is more perfect than Sansuan Mountain." Su Tuo shook his head, and then said nothing. "You old fellow, I see when you hold back," he
Bound
said
by
angrily.
chains of atmospheric
Qian
transport
quickly put aside
and
the
suppressed
relationship.
by the emperor's gas
"Don't look at me.
transport.
I don't
The
know
black
anything.
robe that was
It's
originally
just a
strong
passing
enough
by
to fight the
Xian.
peak
It
die
has
in a
nothing
mortal
to do with
collapse
me.
at a speed
Jinyao
visible to the naked
Xianjun got
eye.
up angrily
Zhan
and
Wuyang
didn't ask
condensed his
anything at
eyes.
all. Waved his
Immediately
hand to lower the
afterwards,
emperor's
the
luck,
cloud and smoke
and
around
smashed
the
the chains of
Xiaoyantai
the suddenly
atmosphere
had a
on the
gilt
black
color
robe.
flowing over.
Without the restraints,
Full of a sensational
Hey robe
trend.
got up directly.
The veteran
and an
Xianjun's complexion
unspeakable
changed
treacherous
slightly
aura
at the
burst
moment,
out instantly.
and they all looked
However,
at Xiaoyantai
Zhan
with a
Wuyang just
serious
moved
face.
his palm to
A pure
directly
golden
shatter the
light
breath.
broke through the
The
layers
entire
of clouds
Xiaoyan typhoon
and
was
cast
surging
onto
in
the
dark
huge
clouds
dojo in
appeared.
Xiaoyantai.
Zhan Wuyang looked
Then,
solemn
the two treasures
stared
stepped
at the
down
black
the clouds
closely.
and came to the
After
platform
a long
of
time,
Xiaoyan.
he said
Seeing
slowly,
these two figures,
"Where did you come
Jian
from?
Wushuang was
And
quite
why would you
speechless.
destroy my big
The craftsman
division?"
Su Tuo
The
was
black
shocked,
robe raised
so
his
he
head,
closed his eyes
and a
and
dull
stopped
and barren
looking.
voice came
Gongzi
from under
Jiao
his
was
hood.
both surprised and
Peeping
happy.
at the ciphertext
Although Nan
death,
Xian had never
Zhan
been to
Wuyang
the heavenly
frowned.
court,
"Are you from
as dying
Tongtian Buddha
immortal,
realm?"
he could
At this
naturally
time,
feel that kind of
Yu
aura
Chang,
fluctuation,
who had not spoken,
with
shook his
incredible
head
expressions
slightly.
in his eyes.
It is unlikely
As for
that
the
they are
disciples
monks
in
in
the
the world
world
of
of
Tongtian
Mountain
Buddhism.
they had already
They are very
passed out.
cautious,
and they didn't
rarely
even have a
break into the
chance
Great
to see the
Division.
true face of the
Indeed,
emperor.
they also don't have
Those who
hair.
came were Zhen
Zhen
Wuyang
Wuyang
followed up with the teasing,
Lord of the whole
and
heaven.
then solemnly,
I have seen the
but
emperor.
why can't he understand
headed by
his realm
Jinyao
cultivation?
Xianjun.
The 10
Isn't he a
veteran
fairy?
Xianjun saluted.
Peep at the
Zhen
ciphertext.
Wuyang waved
Die.
his hand.
Hypo repeated
slowly
the same
glanced
words
at
again.
Jian Wuxuang and
Peeping
the
at the
others.
ciphertext,
A faint smile
Zhen
appeared at
Wuyang
the
looked
corner of his
directly at
mouth.
Jian Wuxuang.
How is the situation
waved
in the
his
sky
hand
to carry him
Jinyao
directly?
Xianjun
What
slightly
is the
nodded.
ciphertext?
Returning
Did you go
to
to
Emperor.
Damation to find
The
a
situation
ciphertext?
is not very good.
Jian Wuxuang
And
was
1/6
dumb,
of the heaven
and
has been
immediately
beaten
after
into
the chains of
nothingness.
luck on his body
Zhen
were wiped
Wuyang's
off.
expression
He
condensed.
stood in front of Zhen
1/6
Wuyang,
of the
and
heaven
Yi
has
Chong.
been beaten into
That
nothingness.
I don't know too well.
It's
I
true.
haven't figured out
They
any
did it.
clues yet.
I don't know at the
The
moment.
reason you went to Damation
Jinyao
is
Xianjun
probably
looked
to find
rather
Su
embarrassed.
Tua, to
However,
find some
the
ciphertexts.
destroyers have been found.
Zhen Wuyang pointed
Upon
out the
hearing
crux of
this,
the problem.
Zhen Wuyang
At
looked
this
at
point,
Jian Wuxuang
Jian
again,
Wuxuang didn't
with a
want to
deep and
hide too
majestic
much.
voice.
Yes, it's
Jian
because of
Wuxuang.
this. Why is
It
there
is
you in the
possible to
sky?
destroy
Shouldn't you
1/6
be
of
in
the
the
world of
sixth-day realm?
Demetian into
Jian
nothingness.
Wuxuang's
I
mouth
am
trembled
afraid it is
slightly,
just something he
and
can't
then
do.
he said,
Zhen
that I'm
Wuyang
going to
stared at him
relax.
closely.
Relief?
Is it caused by
Why
your
didn't
fighting?
you go with Yanner?
Jian Wuxuang
Zhen
shook
Wuyang
his head.
frowned slightly.
With my strength,
Jinyao
I just
Xianjun
barely
hurriedly
protect
said,
myself.
Emperor,
Who is at war
little
with him?
emperor is the emperor,
Changfu,
and should not walk
Changfu.
around at will.
Yes.
He dragged
Only
the
then
black
did
robe
Zhen
at the
Wuyang
cost of
realize
death.
that the meaning was
Zhen
wrong,
Wuyang frowned,
and after
which
a
was
light
bad
cough,
news for him.
he looked at
Jinyao
Changfu as the
Xianjun.
9-turned
Since
immortal
the destroyer
who
of
came
the
out of the
heavenly emperor
Wangu
has
era.
been found.
He has been
Let it
following
out on
him
the
for
spot.
countless years.
He nodded,
and after countless
and then
blood
took off the
battles,
small
and
tripod
finally
around his
opened up
waist
the
and threw
Deciu,
it into the air.
is the veteran
In an
hero of the
instant,
heaven. The
But
great
right
light
now,
of the Chinese
elders
danger
under his
burst
seat,
out,
Changfu
and the chains
died
of
silently.
atmospheric
Slowly
transportation
breathing
came
out.
out.
Zhen
And then a
Wuyang
black
looked at
robe
Jian
fell on the
Wuxuang and
ground.
said,
With the
"Where did
appearance
this
of this black
come
robe,
from?"
the
Peaceful
peaceful
and
and
quiet
quiet
robe came
came
from,
quietly
apart
took
from
up a
Jian
dangerous
Wuxuang.
atmosphere.
Even
At this
Xian
moment,
and the
Zhen
craftsman
Wuyang
Su
and Yi
Tua
Chong
could not
stared
guess.
at the same time.
As long as he
the
didn't
emperor's
say it,
luck that
no
belonged to the
Yanxian would
emperor
know where the
came
black
and
robe
directly
came from.
suppressed the black robe. But now, Jian Wuxuang faintly realized that the heavenly character bone armor was not as simple as imagined. It is even out of control in a sense. So far, Jian Wuxuang has been convinced that the ciphertext hidden in the bone armor of the Tianzi pattern is related to Xuani. But everything has not been solved. It is still confusing, even dangerous. What is the origin of the black robe in the bone armor of the sky? Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5098. Why is there such a terrifying existence in Xian Yi's final secret Tianzi pattern bone armor? Moreover, even Emperor Zhen Wuyang could not detect the realm of that black robe. In what form did he exist in the bone armor of the sky character? And how many years did he exist? Everything seems to surface, but everything involves more like a mess of thread. There is no way to start. Jian Wushuang was silent for a moment and said, I walked out of a bone armor. Bone armor? What bone armor? Zhen Wuyang looked solemnly. A bone armor that contains ciphertexts is very mysterious, but it has now been destroyed, he said, and this black-robed man came out of the bone armor. It was unbelievable to walk out of the bone armor with a black-robed man, whose strength was comparable to that of the peak day immortal. You know, even the 9th-ranked Dayan immortal is the closest to the great Emperor Dao. To feel the existence of the Emperor's luck, let alone the peak Dayan immortal? The peak Dayan immortal is already in extreme existence. They have found and have been immersed in their own avenue for countless years, almost equivalent to the existence of a half-step emperor. And who can seal such a pinnacle great Yinxian in a small bone armor? Or he was sealed in it voluntarily? After hearing Jian Wushuang's remarks, Zhen Wuyang's eyes changed several times, and finally returned to calm. In other words, you take such a bone armor, and go to Demi Tian to find the fairy who can untie the cipher text above. Jian Wushuang nodded. Yes, but I didn't expect that there would be such an existence in that bone armor. Zhen Wuyang Qi is extremely. It is purely nonsense. If there is more terrible existence in that bone armor, what do you do? Is it to ruin my big division? I'll settle the account with you later. Zhen Wuyang left this sentence and looked at the black robe. Then, the chains condensed by the emperor's air luck directly confined the limbs of the black robe and hung it in the center of the Zhaoyantai, hanging in the air. Emperor Wei Huang, so that no fairy dared to look directly. Zhen Wuyang walked slowly in front of the black robe, and the emperor's eyes showed supreme might. Where did you come from, and why do you stay in a bone armor? The clouds are rolling in the clouds, and the wind is blowing suddenly. There was a dead silence in the Zhaoyantai, and the black robe said nothing. Zhen Wuyang frowned. If you don't tell me, do you know what the consequences will be? Dewey descended, completely covering the black robe. Under the imperial prestige, a large amount of dark purple mist overflowed from under the black robe and quickly dissipated. Seeing this kind of energy that is not Yanli but equally tyrannical, Zhen Wuyang waved his hand to pick up a ray of dark purple huamang. Such a tiny strand of dark purple huamang pulsated in his palm, and it lasted for a long time, but it seemed to be extremely repulsive and eventually dissipated. Zhen Wuyang closed his emperor's eyes tightly and seemed to feel the source of this light. The Zhaoyantai was extremely silent, and no one dared to speak. And at this time, Yu Chang looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Little friend Jian, you are in trouble this time. Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. I never thought of this kind of result. It's okay, the emperor will have a way. Yu Chang said with a smile. Little friend, what adventure do you have when you go this time? He was startled slightly, and then said, No, all that is left is the thrilling, and Qiyu has never met before. When Yu Chang heard the words, he nodded and said no more. Jian Wushuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time faintly confused. Could it be discovered so soon? He quickly suppressed this idea again. The Boyang vase was the product of the emperor and the sheep. It could hide the heavens, but how could it not hide a pinnacle great emperor? Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes and secretly became anxious. No, it's okay, they won't fight, right? For a long time, the Poyang bottle has served as his pocket of treasures. No matter what the treasures he has obtained, it is stuffed into the Poyang bottle together with his whole cards. And the dark blue diamond crystal that stored the black robe old man was also easily stuffed into the Boyang bottle by him. As the sword spirit in Yu Chang's emperor sword, the black robe old man must have participated in battles after another. In other words, the heavenly court where the three emperors were destroyed is very likely to have Yu Chang's participation. This is a blood feud that cannot be reconciled, and there is absolutely no possibility of reconciliation. If you really fight in the Boyang vase, the three emperors who have only the true soul will definitely fall behind, and may even be defeated. Regardless of the situation, this was something Jian Wushuang didn't want to see. However, with two real emperors around him, Jian Wushuang couldn't open the Boyang bottle to check it, so he could only secretly worry. At this moment, Zhen Wuyang opened his eyes, and a touch of golden light appeared in the emperor's eyes. He seemed to have realized something, frowned again. After a while, Zhen Wuyang said, "You don't belong to the big division domain, or even this era. Who are you?" In a word, even Yu Chang was solemn. The weight of this sentence is really too heavy, and contains too much content. From that long time to the barren Wangu era, and swept through the heavens of Zhenmiang. If you don't know the meaning of this sentence, the Wangu era is an era that I can't even imagine. There is even an era that is even more distant than the Wangu era, and the black robe at the moment has actually existed since a more ancient time. Only then did Jian Wushuang discover that he had far underestimated the existence of the sky character bone armor, and at the same time he was filled with an unspeakable emotion. Has the news of Master Xuani become secret in an era where even time and years have no meaning? Who is he? What did you do that fell to where it is now? Jian Wushuang was shocked in his heart, and at the same time looked solemnly at the black robe, eager to learn some news from him. However, under the suppression of the emperor's luck, the black robe was on the verge of extinction again. You don't belong to this era. Who are you? Zhen Wuyang took the trouble to repeat this question again. The black robe, who had been silent for a long time, raised his head at this moment, and shot two dark purple cold glows from under the wide hood. That was his gaze, looking at Zhen Wuyang. Then the old hoarse voice sounded again, peeping at the ciphertext die. Except for this sentence, don't you have anything else? Zhen Wuyang frowned. If you are willing to say it, I will let you go once, so that you no longer suffer, and let you go. Chapter 5099. Immediately afterwards he changed his head again. If you still don't say anything, I have many ways to make you more painful than staying in that little bone armor 1,000
the disciples
times,
of Sun Tzu and
10,000
Mountain,
times.
the master craftsman
However,
Su Tua,
Hypo turned a deaf ear to what he
and
said,
young Master
still
Jiao
stubbornly
all looked
repeating the
extremely
sentence.
In
The
the
one
sea
who
of
looks
no
at the
edge,
ciphertext
the punishment of the emperor
Zhen
is the
Wuyang
most
was angry
serious punishment.
and directly waved his
Once
arms.
these
In an
responsibilities
instant,
fall,
the
it is
chains
almost
condensed by
equivalent
the
to a
emperor's
death luck.
sentence.
Lashed
At
against
this time,
the black robe
Jian
fiercely.
Wuxuang took a
With a
step
whip,
forward and said,
the whole body of
"This
the black
battle
robe
was caused by me
cracked
alone.
a hideous
They are
crack.
all victims.
Then the 9
It has
chains
nothing
fell
to
down
do with
together.
them.
I will
The
bear
dark
it
purple
myself.
Huamong that was enough
Who
to
said
cover
they
the
should be
sky was
punished?
disintegrating."
Zhen Wuyang looked
and the
at him
body
and
of the
said
black
in a deep
robe
voice,
disappeared at a
"This
speed
emperor
visible
will
to
only
the
find
naked
you
eye.
today.
If you don't say it will not do you any
willing
good.
to take
If
it.
you say it,
Jian
it will feel
Wuxuang better."
arched his hands and
Zhen
said
Wuyang
firmly,
said slowly,
Zhen Wuyang
even
said
at
in
the
a
edge
deep
of
voice,
life and death.
"You said,
The black
what
robe
kind of
still
punishment do
repeated
you
the
want?
previous sentence.
Any punishment
The
is
one
fine.
who looks at the ciphertext
Okay, happy
die.
boy. The
Death.
emperor will punish
Zhen
you to
Wuyang
go to
sipped,
the wasteland
and a total
to
of
move
9
bricks.
chains fell together.
It is
bricks.
foreseeable that once all the
Jian
chains are
Wuxuang was
dropped,
dumbfounded.
the black robe
Yes,
will inevitably
let me go to
disappear.
Da Huang and stay
Jian
honestly
Wuxuang's
for
heart was
10,000
stunned,
years.
and he wanted to
1,000
save
years.
the black robe.
The blazing
But
and
Yu
warm
Chang took a
Yanli
step ahead of
disappeared.
him, and the
He waved
clouds
his
of
hand
Han
to stop the 9
gradually
Dao monarch
disappeared,
Qi luck chain,
replaced by
and
low
stood in
black
front
clouds.
of Zhen Wuyang.
Thunder
Yu
and
Chang,
lightning,
what are you?
thick as a dragon,
Zhen Wuyang frowned
brewed in the dark
confusion.
clouds,
Yu Chang
and accompanied
arched his
by a
hands and
huge
said,
vortex.
Going
It
back
was a
to the
scene of
emperor, he
destruction.
can't die.
It was
This
in these
involves
void
a lot of
clouds
things
that even Yan
If you
Xian
act
dared not
rashly,
wait any longer.
it might be detrimental
And there was
to
a
many
giant
things.
bird that spread its
Zhen
wings
Wuyang
and jumped.
frowned,
Thinking
thinking
about
about
the meaning of his
www.
words,
and then said after a
Akanshu,
moment,
"Calm this
It's
giant
okay,
bird is
imprison him."
completely black and
When
blue."
Yu Chang heard the
and under
words,
its
he
wings,
nodded.
Then
It can
turned
even
to look
cover
at the black
several
robe,
celestial planes
stretched
under
out
its
his hand
wings.
and stroked it.
It is so huge
Layers of
that
black
even the
and blue
dragon
aura
like
appeared.
lightning in the dark
Then he was
clouds
wrapped in
is
a black
extremely
robe
small
and put it back
on
into
top
his
of this
sleeve.
giant bird's
As the
beast.
black robe
There are two
disappeared,
figures sitting
the
upright.
unspeakable
One of
depressive
them is
breath
Yu Chang,
disappeared
and the
completely.
other is Jian
The
Wuxuang.
entire Zhao
Even
Yantai
Yanli
was
can
restored
swallow
to
the
the state
frozen
of
Yang
wind
Wenshu.
raging in the
He
void.
didn't get any
Even
useful
Jian
news from
Wuxuang
Hypo's
felt a
mouth,
deep chill,
which made
This
Jin
is a
Wuyang
void
quite
that has
upset.
never been seen
He
before.
turned to look at Jian
And the
Wuxuang.
heavenly plane does
Only
not exist at
resentment
all.
was left in the
Not even
emperor's
a trace
eyes.
of derivation.
Then what ciphertext
And some
is
are
hidden
only
in the
barren
bone
and
armor of
nothingness.
Rosh.
This
So
is
that
a
you
very
can't even
dark
ask
void.
the news.
Even the stars have not been
Nothing.
born, mainly
Except
because
for
when
the
we
burst
were
of
about to see
lightning,
the answer,
there is no other
the black
color.
robe rushed
Sitting
out
on
and
the bird's
destroyed
head
the
of the
bone
giant
armor.
bird.
Jian
Jian
Wuyang's
Wuxuang
voice
no
rose
longer knew
sharply.
where he was.
That is to say,
The giant
after
bird
having
can span
tossed for
hundreds
so
of
long
celestial
and
planes
ruined me
between
half
the
of the
wings,
sky,
and
I
it can
finally
be
got
inferred
nothing?
that it has been
Jian
completely far
Wuxuang
away
was
from
quite
the center
embarrassed.
of the big
You
division.
can say so.
Could it be that
Zhen
the
Wuyang
so-called
was
great
extremely
desolation is
angry
the border
and
of
turned his
deceit?
head to look
Jian
at the
Wuxuang
craftsman
trembled
Su
in
Tua.
his heart as he
Su
thought.
Tua.
At
This
this
emperor
moment,
must listen
Yu
to the
Chang
truth.
suddenly looked back
What is
and
the
looked at him
ciphertext
with the
on the
warm
bone
complexion.
armor? The
That's a good
craftsman
guess.
Su Tua slowly
The
opened
so-called
his
Da
eyes.
Huang is
We
indeed
did
the
you an
border of
indeed,
deceit.
as the little friend Jian said.
Wuxuang felt
Su
a shock
Tua
in his
doesn't
heart.
even know it.
How do you know what
When
I think
Zhen
in my
Wuyang
heart?
heard this, he felt
Yu
nothing
Chang
to
smiled
say.
slightly.
At this time,
Of course
Yu
it is a
Chang
guess.
said,
If you
Every
are not
dust
thinking
in this
about
big
this
division,
problem, it would
every
be strange.
celestial plane has
Jian
gone through
Wuxuang
countless
was silent.
catastrophes to form the current prosperity. He didn't
And the
understand why these
significance of the
emperors
existence
could
of the
always
heaven
see what other
is to
Yin
protect
Xian
the
was
countless
thinking.
horizons
After
of
a
heaven
while,
and eternal
Yu Chang
prosperity
spoke first
and protect
we
the
are now
countless
far away
heavenly
from the center
arrogances
of toward their
you
own
and
avenue.
rushed to the border.
However,
He was a little
this
stunned when he
unnecessary
heard
battle
the words.
has turned nearly
It took
100
20,000
heavenly
years
planes and endless
to unknowingly
creatures into dust.
It has been nearly
and everything in it
20,000
may be
years
destroyed
since the divine
This
power
is beyond
universe.
what the heavenly court
And for
can
nearly
tolerate.
20,000
The
years,
last
he
Dayan
has been
immortal who
surrounding
erased
Desiyu.
nearly 10 celestial planes has been imprisoned in the sea of boundlessness and endured endless nothingness. Now, your damage to Tianyu far exceeds that of any previous war, and punishment is inevitable. After the sentence was pronounced, Yu Chang looked at Jin Wuyang. Chapter 5100. The vast expanse, including countless celestial planes of the Great Division, even began to make Jian Wushuang doubts. "Deceyu, is there really a boundary?" Now that he got the exact news from Yu Chang, this made Jian Wushuang feel slightly worried. It's just that Deceyu is so vast and vast. So in what way should the real ultimate development be displayed before his eyes? And Xianyi, Lao Zun and the others, where and in what form should exist in this ultimate development? Just when Jian Wushuang was a little startled, Yu Chang said leisurely, "You have also seen that not all celestial voids can be born out of planes. The more you reach the boundary, the less planes there will be. And the boundary of the big division domain is the limit that the Emperor can expand to, and there is no power here, and it is meaningless to continue to expand. Therefore, we set the boundary of the Great Division as the Great Wilderness." A brief language sketched out the outline of Deceyu for Jian Wushuang. Let him know something. Then he got up, faced the wind that was enough to make the fairy body tremble, and looked at the endless nothingness through the layers of dark clouds. Outside of the big division domain, is it even more expansive? It may disappoint you. Outside the Great Division, there is an endless wilderness. Even Dian Immortal will be lost in the wilderness and eventually become dust. Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. Could it be that there is only an endless great famine outside the Deceyu? Of course not, Yu Chang smiled. Although the great wilderness is endless, it has a boundary after all. Beyond that boundary, there are many large domains that are the same as those of the Great Division. Jian Wushuang's heart was hot, and his silent heart felt a little restless. With infinite existence, there are infinite possibilities. Everything is within reach. At this moment, what did he think of, and looked towards Yu Changdao? "Uncle Yu, I can ask, what is the name of the nearest big domain next to the big division domain?" Yu Chang looked at him and said with a smile, "Ask what this does. Do you want to leave Deceyu?" No. I'm just curious to ask." This is not something that can't be said, but the Yinxian known in Deceyu is indeed poorly understood. The big domain adjacent to the big division domain? It is the infinite border of the great wilderness, and that big domain is called the Tongtian Buddha realm. Jian Wushuang was taken aback. "Through the heavens? Why, do you know there?" "No, I don't know, I just think it's a bit novel." Yu Chang looked ahead. It seemed to be reminiscing. "Where? I wondered once. All the monk capitals are more stubborn and extreme? They gave me some not-so-good perceptions. It's a coincidence. The neighboring Deceyu is actually the world of Tongtian Buddha?" Jian Wushuang was shocked secretly. The experience of the past reappeared in his mind. Although he had never been to the so-called Tongtian Buddha realm, the Tongtian Buddha realm had some contact with him unconsciously. In the Sand Demon Cave, encountering a sea of blood, the cause and effect are killed off. Sha Qing, the lord of the Sand Demon Cave, surrendered to his death, saying that the only way to resolve the catastrophe was to go to the world of Tongtian Buddha. Only then did Jian Wushuang have some connection with the Buddha realm, that Tongtian. Now that 20,000 years have passed, the Tongtian Buddha realm, which is about to be sealed in memory, has once again come to mind. After all, do you want to go to the world of Tongtian Buddha? Jian Wushuang hesitated in his heart, and at the same time worried about the causal massacre he was carrying. The so-called cause and effect massacre is a crack. Although it is not too harmful, it is a hidden danger after all. This hidden danger will continue to grow with the owner, and eventually reach the point where it cannot be ignored. At present, Jian Wushuang has nothing to do with this big killing, but he knows that if it is not cleared in time, his mellow spirit will be completely destroyed. So he can't ignore any clues about the world of Tongtian Buddha. Because of a woman, a large-scale killing and robbery made Jian Wushuang and Tongtian Buddha realm contact. Of course, these are things that Yu Chang didn't know, and naturally he wouldn't think about it. Yu Chang continued to speak. "So, I don't have a good understanding of the world of Tongtian Buddhism, including emperors who are more repulsive there." When he said this, he looked at Jian Wushuang and continued. "So what you have to do when you come to this border wasteland is to move bricks, and move bricks hard." "Ah no, isn't it really moving bricks? There can be fakes. The emperor has no jokes." I don't know how long it has passed, how long it has transitioned into the void, and even the years have no meaning. Until Jian Wushuang is numb, everything has new progress. Ahead is the great wilderness, Yu Chong said. Jian Wushuang's heart shook. Then he got up and looked forward. He saw that the originally extremely dark void had a dim light and a solid earth. Wait, the earth? How can there be a solid ground in this vast wilderness that is so barren that even dust can't exist? However, Jian Wushuang was truly convinced when the giant bird below him steadily landed on the solid ground. Here, the boundary of Desiyu, which belongs to the void of the great wilderness, actually exists in the form of the earth. The earth is boundless, extending to every emptiness in sight. The giant bird standing steadily on the earth raised its head and sighed, then turned into a palm-sized chasing bird and flew into Yu Chang's palm and disappeared. No, not land. The sword with the soles of the feet on the ground did not change slightly in both sides, and soon I noticed that the ground under my feet was not the real ground, but was composed of dense bones. Yu Chang glanced at him quite appreciatively, and then said, "Yes, there is really no land on this wild border. This solid ground is actually paved by the bones of Dingxiu, Xianxian and Dianxian. Are these all the bones of the cultivators and immortal Yen in the Great Division?" Jian Wushuang's eyes were solemn. There are too many to an unimaginable level. How many bones of monks and immortals are needed to cover the vast wilderness and emptiness? Yu Chang nodded, as if narrating a small matter. It is indeed all the bones of the monks in the Great Division, and the bones of the Yanxian, of which the bones of the Yanxian accounted for 70%. Jian Wushuang was shocked and completely covered the border of this great wilderness. What kind of battle he had experienced in the age of Wangu? Does the establishment of a heavenly court require so many killings to become immortal? He also understood a little bit why there are so few fairy cultivators in Desiyu nowadays, and Dian Celestial being almost non-existent. Multi-source app. Mimi reading the reason may be traced back to the Battle of the Emperors in the ancient age. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5101. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign. It has been nearly 20,000 years since he reached the ultimate Yanhuan. And in the 20,000 years, Jian Wushuang also knew a lot about those ancient secrets that were unknown to Dian Immortal. The Wangu era belonged to the era of coexistence of all emperors, and countless stunning arrogances came into being, creating their own supreme road. Just what Jian Wushuang knew, there were 5 emperors. The 5 emperors are the 5 heavenly courts, coexisting in the big division domain, dividing domains to rule. Yang Jun Su He Dao Gong, Feng Hua Lu Kro. And these 5 emperors can be regarded as representatives in the big division, and there are several emperors. The Wangu era was a brilliant world, with so many emperors, let alone Dianxian. However, with the emergence of Zhen Wuyang, everything eventually turned into dust. Just what Jian Wushuang knew, nearly 10 emperors died in Zhen Wuyang's hands. And Yanxian, Dianxian seems to be countless. He also understood why there were very few bones of Xianxian left in the Desai domain. It turned out that all the bones were pushed into the wilderness to fill the border of the wilderness. This is a dusty secret. Whether it is known or not, it has not much meaning. Stepping on the ground paved with the infinite bones of Yanxian, Jian Wushuang walked slowly along with Yu Chang. The great wasteland is endless, and the bones under this foot are also endless. The emperor is now punishing you to the great wasteland. It is really helpless. Otherwise it will not be enough to warn or convince the crowd. Furthermore, the emperor asked you to come to this great wilderness, which is also the result of our joint discussions. There are 2 reasons for this. One is to warn the public, and the other is that this great wasteland really needs to be repaired. Repair? Jian Wushuang looked at him, a little puzzled. Yu Chang nodded. It's true, this vast wasteland, it's time to fix it. Jian Wushuang felt a little uncomprehending. Could it be that there will be an immortal existence in this place, where even the power of extinction can't exist? It is indeed impossible for Yanxian to come here. Even Dianxian will never set foot in this great famine. But there are always exceptions in everything. As Yu Chang said, he waved his arms, and suddenly mad dust was rolled up on this fairy bone road. With the sudden rise of Quangshan, some subtle auras began to appear on the Xinggu road. Jian Wushuang subconsciously looked at the immortal bone road under his feet, only to realize that a pair of footprints appeared. What are these footprints? It's trouble. Yu Chang smiled slightly and said, apart from those monk heads, you are the first Yanxian to come to the great wilderness. Those monk heads. Why did they appear in the great wilderness? Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. Yu Chang said, they used their feet to measure the earth, and they tried to save all the eternal immortals, and went to their heavenly Buddha realm to worship. The most important point is that they regard this great wilderness as a place of experience, and they will come forward one after another. Jian Wushuang was a little dumb when he heard the words. The idea is really unique, so you should use it as a place of experience? Yanli cannot be retained at all, and it is boundless. I am afraid that even Dianxian will be lost here. It is more appropriate to compare this great wilderness to a tomb. Yes, even I never thought that they would have such a firm determination, Yu Chang said, and then looked at him. Wu Shuang, all you have to do is to stay here and reinforce the barriers of the great wilderness. Stay here for 10,000 years? Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. 10,000 years is a period of retreat for the immortals, and even the top cultivators, not long at all. But for Jian Wushuang it was different. His growth rate was too fast, and 10,000 years was enough for him to do too many things. Right now, he was going to be exiled in the wilderness for 10,000 years, which greatly restricted any of his actions. Yu Chang seemed to see the sadness in his eyes and smiled. 10,000 years is not a long time, but it is just a rhetoric. If the emperor didn't say that at the time, I am afraid that the second emperor would never let it go. After all, it was destroyed. It's his greatness. In 1,000 years, I will come to Dahuang to pick you up, but of course it depends on your performance. Jian Wushuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. 1,000 years of time is not too far away for him. Quandang has experienced this great wilderness. Yes, what do I do next in this great famine? Of course it is building the wall to reinforce the barrier. Ah, it turned out to be really moving bricks? Of course. As they continued to talk, the two figures moved forward at a gentle speed, until a wall that almost half the void appeared before they stopped. It's not so much a wall, it's a real fairy trail. It is as if the road to the bones of the bones is rolled up by some supreme power. It rises high, almost isolating the entire void. And it is divided into two even if it is dying. Standing here is like the supreme under the fairy trail-like barriers. Everyone will feel their own insignificance. Here is the real border of Desiyu, and it is also the edge of the great wasteland. Yu Chang looked at Jian Wushuang, who was already fascinated, and said in a slow voice, "And what you have to do now is to repair this border barrier a little bit." "Xiao, repair here?" Jian Wushuang swallowed his throat with some difficulty, and bitterness flashed in his eyes. "Yes." Yu Chang nodded slightly. "This border barrier was built by me and the Emperor. It can stop all enemies, and will not be destroyed for endless years. However, on the other side of the great wilderness, those monk heads from the world of Tongtian Buddhism use certain methods to damage the border barrier, allowing them to enter the Great Division. What you have to do now, Wushuang, is to completely seal the border barriers and block all enemies from the wilderness." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Okay, I will." At this time, Yu Chang put a smile away and became a little serious. "Remember, Wushuang, this is a punishment. This is the most dangerous place in the entire Desai region. Even dying immortal is nothing here. At the moment you set foot on the border of the wilderness, you have to make any preparations. You are not only facing the weakness of the immortal body, but also the enemies hidden in the wilderness." Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. "Enemies in the great wilderness? There are other immortals in the great wilderness." Yu Chang nodded. "To be precise, they are no longer evangelists, they are just a certain obsession, wandering and lost in the wilderness. After I leave, any evangelists and monk heads that come out of the great wilderness will be your enemies. All you have to do is to completely block all enemies outside the border, and don't miss one." Chapter 5102. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign Yuchang left. After entrusting Jian Wushuang for a while, he left. Only Jian Wushuang was left on this fairy bone road, the border of the great wilderness. He stood in place, feeling the endless aura of ancient times, and at the same time thinking about the meaning of Yu Chang's words. In this great wilderness, can there be a fairy cultivating approach in walking in it? And what kind of existence is the so-called Tongtian Buddha realm outside the great wilderness? And those guys actually use the end of the great wasteland as part of their own trials? Jian Wushuang thought of the great monks he had seen in the Sand Demon Cave. And he also got some news from the discussion forum with Kong Luan. The heads of monks who haunt the Sand Demon Cave are indeed from the world of Tongtian Buddha. Moreover, after experiencing the incident in the Sand Demon Cave, Jian Wushuang had no favors with the monk heads, especially the few Dayan immortals. But only the monk Kong Luan, Jian Wushuang had some feelings for him. He gained a lot from the conversation under the Blood Sea. All in all, in the world of Tongtian Buddhism, outside of the great wilderness, Jian Wushuang didn't have much favor. After roughly clarifying some clues to the conclusion, Jian Wushuang began to walk forward. The boundless wilderness without borders, everything seems to be shrouded in dense dust, without a heavenly plane, without a big sun star. Yes, it's just dim and gloomy. What Yu Chang said was right. Even if Dayan Immortal came here, he would eventually be lost. But Jian Wushuang did not have anything unusual. His mind, spirit and thoughts had long been melded to a terrifying degree. For him, Dahuang was actually a good place for cultivation. Stepping on the Xingu Road, Jian Wushuang looked at the boundary barrier that divided the void in two, and quickly understood what Yu Chang wanted him to repair. In the center of this vast border barrier, there is a gap, only a line. It's like being torn apart by external force, making the boundary barrier no longer complete. This gap seemed to have only one line, but when Jian Wushuang really went to check the gap, he knew what the abyss was. The entire boundary barrier is too vast and infinite, so even if only one line is broken, it is an irreparable crack. Jian Wushuang stood in the center of this crack, unavoidably getting big for a while. This rift is too vast. I am afraid that it may not be able to completely fill it if it is packed into thousands of celestial planes. Today's Jian Wushuang, it is not difficult to move an ordinary heavenly plane in the Desai domain. But the difficulty lies in the fact that this is a great wasteland, and everything is barren. There is no celestial plane, and there is no growth force to supplement, only rely on oneself to slowly restore the growth force. In this way, repairing this border barrier is tantamount to a disaster. Since there was no Tianyu plane to use, Jian Wushuang turned to look at the Xingu Road under his feet. This boundary barrier, like the Xingu Road, was built with the bones of Yanxian. But if you want to repair it, you can only fill it with the Xingu Road. Do what he said. After Jian Wushuang roughly calculated the gap between the cracks in the boundary barrier, he suddenly released his own power. This great famine, I don't know how many billions of years of time there has been no development. Therefore, when Jian Wushuang released his power, the entire endless void and Dahuang directly burst into vortexes. The thick dust was absorbed by the vortex, but hovering in the void, making everything tremble. Thunder and lightning that is as thick as a dragon looms in the eddy current, and may tear the void and fall at any time. Here there is no heavenly order. Everything is chaotic, the original state. Then in the next section, thousands of thunder and lightning that resembled a giant dragon, all blasted towards Jian Wushuang, who exuded power. Boom! Even the Xingu Road trembled, and the fragments of the fairy bones became a fan. As for Jian Wushuang, who resisted the sky thunder with his body, he was severely blasted into the heart of the earth. These heavenly thunders could not have much influence on Jian Wushuang, who possessed the immortal body, but they still made him embarrassed to the extreme. When the thunder and lightning subsided, he walked out of the heart of the earth quite embarrassed. No, don't you have to be hacked even to release Yanli? Jian Wushuang was a little puzzled. He decided to try again. The majestic and surging force once again flowed in the meridians and escaped. But this time, it did not trigger the void vision. Jian Wushuang quickly understood that the original vision was caused by an accident. However, in this great wasteland, it is indeed impossible to condense and derive power, and it is a completely barren land. After thinking about it, Jian Wushuang directly set about repairing the boundary barrier. Since the heavenly plane was not born in this great wilderness, he could only start to cut off the road of immortal bones, and use the piled bones to fill the gaps between the boundary barriers. The invisible sword quietly condenses Jian Wushuang rises into the void, and then cuts it down with a single sword. Rumble. Xiangulu was cut open by a crack, and then under the cutting of the invisible sword, a square trace was cut out at the center of Xiangulu. Then, Jian Wushuang put away the invisible sword, and his figure also fell on the road of Xianbone. He suddenly stomped his foot, and in an instant, the Xingu road was sinking and shaking, and a square road blocked the size of a sacred mountain rose directly from the ground. Jian Wushuang's arms were supporting the sky, and he directly held up the road blocked the size of a sacred mountain, stacked in the center of the boundary barrier. Although the road block is bigger than the sacred mountain, it is as small as dust when compared with the cracks in the boundary. But Jian Wushuang didn't care about these, silently began to carry out the next move. In this way, in this vast wilderness, a figure tirelessly cuts the road of immortal bones, and at the same time piles the cut road blocks the size of a mountain in the gap between the boundary barriers. In the border wilderness, there is no concept of time. Everything is in a primitive state of chaos. An immortal, with a weak mind and spirit will be lost in this. There is only one figure, doing his own thing firmly, constantly mending the gaps in the boundary. My big companion, where do you think Wushuang will be now? I heard that Demaxian has been seriously damaged. The cloud smoke curls up, and the heavenly palace lies quietly among the clouds, which is quite mysterious. In a warm pavilion, Xiao Dijuan leaned against the window, looking at the swimming sea of clouds with some wonder. The purple-robed old man who had been standing behind him looked up at him and said, "Your Highness, you have already passed." Xiao Dijuan returned to his senses, looked at him sideways and said in a condensed voice, "Why can't I even say this now?" Chapter 5103. Wan Dao's sword sovereign. The thin purple robe bowed his head and nodded, and said in a steady voice, "His Royal Highness is the prince, and these should not be issues that the prince should consider." Xiadaijin's voice rose sharply. "Then what should I consider? Should the emperors kill each other?" He was silent, and said after a moment, "I can't influence His Highness' judgment, but His Highness should be considered for the future." "Okay, I see." Xiadaijin was rather impatient, and a lonely flash in his eyes. The thin purple robe continued, "His Royal Highness, don't rely too much on Jian Wushuang. You must know that he is not dependent on His Highness. He has his own purpose. I don't think he will be restrained by any immortal. Once he finds his own way, it's not far from leaving." Xiadaijin couldn't bear it. "Enough, go out." But he did not leave, and continued to say, "In order to prevent your highness from going on like this, I have already met the emperor, and asked the emperor to send a great heaven official for his highness, and he will be able to come soon." Boom! Xian Chuang was directly shot to pieces by Xiao Dijuan. He stood in the warm pavilion, angrily to the extreme. "What are you talking about? Let the emperor send me a great heaven official? You don't know my heaven official is Jian Wushuang." The thin purple robe looked calm. Jian Wushuang doesn't want to be a heavenly official of His Highness, and he is not moistened by the blood of the emperor, so he is not a heavenly official of His Highness. Okay, if you have you, then I have to take a good look. How long does that great faculty live under me? After leaving these last words, Xiao Dijuan left Muan Pavilion straight away. The thin purple robe slowly turned around. A touch of firmness flashed in his eyes. In the endless wilderness, under the borderless barriers, at this moment, in the gap like the abyss of the sky, there are millions of square road blocks like sacred mountains. Each road block is comparable to a sacred mountain, and millions of sacred mountains are stacked on top of each other, and it has long been impossible to imagine its grandeur. But in this way, compared with the border barriers, they are as small as dust. In the center of the crack in the boundary barrier, on top of a million sacred mountain-like fairy bones, sat a free and easy figure. He is Jian Wushuang. In a very short period of time, the boundary crack was filled with an edge. Although it is not a big deal, it is quite good. Looking at the still unimaginable cracks, Jian Wushuang was already thinking about how to plug the cracks the fastest. If the Xiangu Road was cut out like a sacred mountain to fill it up as it is now, I am afraid that it would not be possible to plug the boundary cracks in 1,000 years. What should I do to quickly repair the cracks? Or should I try to push with Wushuang Kendo? Jian Wushuang thought to himself, but soon all his ideas were rejected by him. In this great wasteland, there can be no generative power born at all. And this means that he can't draw generative power from the void. However, Wushuang's sword Dao is extremely depleted of power. Once the immortal Boda's recovery cannot make up for the loss, then he will be extremely passive. Jian Wushuang would never do such a risky move. What's more, here is the border of the wilderness full of unknown desolation. No one knows what exactly exists here. Not to mention that beyond this border barrier, there is an even more endless and dangerous famine. So Jian Wushuang still acted honestly according to the previous method. With a sword down, thousands of sword intents surged, and then every sword intent seemed to give birth to spiritual wisdom, spontaneously cutting the fairy bone road at the fastest speed. Then Jian Wushuang shook the ground, and piled the road blocks into the cracks in the road boundary. I am afraid that even he himself had never thought that Wushuang Kendo would be used to do these things one day. The sacred mountain-like road blocks are piled up in the boundary cracks, and the sacred mountain-like roadblocks are actually the corpses of a fairy. Countless bones of Yanxian finally lay in the great wilderness, becoming a part of the ancient barren. Jian Wushuang also finally understood that Mingming Xianxian had already transcended the order of heaven and became an immortal existence. Why is there so sparse Xianxian in Desiyu? It turns out that those Xianxian from the ancient times have long been turned into dead bones and discarded in the wilderness. It was extremely boring to repair the border in this great wilderness. Originally Jian Wushuang thought that he would encounter injustice, but never thought that this great wilderness would not even have any fluctuations. If nothing happens, He will not encounter a catastrophe in just 1,000 years. And when Jian Wushuang repeatedly moved the bricks, something unexpected happened suddenly. Under the fairy bone road that has been dug deep gully, the pure Wushuang sword intent is even harder to dig down, as if it has touched some restrictions, so it is difficult to make an inch. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, with a bad premonition in his heart. He knows the point where Wushuang Kendo's sword intent is tyrannical, and it is precisely because of that bad premonition will grow stronger. Could it be that there is hidden under this fairy bone road what? Jian Wushuang quickly walked down from the void, and came to the edge of the pothole dug out of deep gully. Through the layers of celestial bones, his eyes turned to the deepest part of the pit. But at the same time, a thick black smoke that could not be ignored was like a black dragon, suddenly gushing out from the deepest part of the pothole. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't ignore this kind of energy that burst out in an instant. The black smoke gushes out, covering the sky instantly, making the void even more extremely dark. Due to the surging and rising of black smoke, a vortex once again appeared above the void. The more violent vortex was spinning, echoing with the black smoke, and it seemed that a supreme punishment was brewing. Jian Wushuang secretly said a bad sound. Without thinking about it, he directly released the invisible sword and slashed towards the black smoke pillar like a black dragon. Sneer! Like tearing brocade and silk, the black smoke was cut off from it forcibly, and finally dissipated in the void. But Jian Wushuang did not relax his vigilance. He did not think that the black smoke would disappear like this. What is it that emits black smoke? Is it some kind of prohibition? You know, this fairy bone road in the great wilderness was formed by Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang hand in hand in that ancient time, and its span of time is unimaginable. If there is a certain restriction under this fairy bone road, I am afraid that once it is born, it will inevitably cause some kind of catastrophe on this fairy bone road. Jian Wushuang frowned. He never thought that digging a road would actually dig a catastrophe. Immediately afterwards, the black smoke that was cut off unexpectedly spewed out again, and with an unimaginable aura, covered the entire fairy bone road. This must be a disaster. Chapter 5104. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign. As if to confirm the anxiety in Jian Wushuang's heart, Xiangulus suddenly trembled. Along with this tremor, a voice that seemed to have come from the Wanggu era resounded with a sense of decay. Kill, kill! A line of shouting and killing came from under the Xianggu Road, causing the entire Xianggu Road to start to turbulence. Jian Wushuang's gaze was completely solemn, and he could feel the terrifying existence under the heart of this earth. Accompanied by the sound of shouting and killing, it shook the void, as if countless immortals were fighting on the battlefield in a battle, draining the last drop of blood. The entire border wilderness seemed to have been transformed into a battlefield, returning to the ancient time. The fairy bone road under the feet was trembling, as if these fairy bones would wake up at any time, and everything was shocked beyond words. Kill, kill! At the next moment, under the abyss, the black smoke suddenly became stronger than at any time before, almost reaching the level of obscuring the void. Jian Wushuang stepped back slowly, frowning tightly. This kind of supreme aura is definitely beyond the reach of ordinary Yanxian. There must be a catastrophe on this fairy bone road. It seemed that just as he thought, in the black smoke that was enough to obscure the void, a pair of true eyes like the stars of the sun appeared quietly. Dark smoke realized suddenly appeared. With the appearance of this dual true purpose, Jian Wushuang immediately noticed it. With eyes facing each other, thousands of black mist like arrows burst out of the black smoke. Jian Wushuang was startled secretly, and almost retreated 100 steps before he even thought of it. At the same time, holding an invisible sword, he slashed the black mist arrows from the violent shooting. I'm still alive. I'm still alive. Amidst the black smoke, a rotten and barren voice came out, as if the pain that had suppressed the endless years was released. Zhen Wuyang, I'm still alive. I'm still alive. The black smoke trembled violently, and the bones on the uppermost layer of Xianggu Road began to shatter into dust. Jian Wushuang stepped back slowly, and he already felt a desolate and lonely breath from the black smoke, plus what he said, it can be concluded that it is living with Zhen Wuyang for an era. And those who live with Zhen Wuyang for an era, and can call Zhen Wuyang directly, can only be hostile forces, who can run through the long river of time, and is still undead, who is not the strongest. After thinking about these things clearly, Jian Wushuang did not hesitate to prepare to retreat to the border of the great wilderness. After all, once Yanli was consumed here, he would truly die. However, before he started, the black smoke covering the void suddenly gathered, turned into a heavy hammer enough to cover the sky, and hit Jian Wushuang heavily. He was shocked, naturally feeling the terrible power of this kind of power, and hurriedly avoided. Boom! The heavy hammer condensed from the black mist hit the Xingu road heavily, causing a huge shock. Those immortal bones that have existed for hundreds of millions of years without decay simply cannot withstand such a heavy pressure, and are instantly blasted out of the potholes of one party after another. And Jian Wushuang didn't love war at all, and quickly left Xingu Road with the gods and the mountains and rivers. But Xingu Road is too vast, almost as endless as the great wilderness. With his departure, the heavy hammer condensed by black smoke changed again, turned into hundreds of chains, and shot down frantically. Zheng! Zheng! Every chain made of black smoke can easily break a fairy bone road. However, Jian Wushuang, who used Shudi Mountain and River to escape, was unable to pull the distance, and chains descending from the sky blocked any possible escape directions. He frowned, and the invisible sword was quietly held in his hand, directly bursting out thousands of sword intent. Every sword intent exploded with unparalleled momentum, slashing towards the chains. When the two collided, light and darkness existed for only a moment, and then all disappeared. Jian Wushuang no longer rushed to escape, but turned and looked towards the void. In the void, the monstrous black smoke has gathered together, swimming slowly. As the black smoke continued to dissipate, a pair of true eyes hidden in it finally fully condensed. It was a body that was 10 million feet tall. Even though it was hidden under the black smoke, it was difficult to conceal the magnificence of the figure. The mottled and gloomy beetle was broken, and it was not even visible that it was a battle armor, because it was so broken that it could not cover the body that was as high as 10,000 meters. As the black smoke dissipated, the body that was as high as 10 million feet stood on the road of Xingu. He wore a shattered armor, big ears, disheveled hair, and a pair of true eyes that were made of divine blood, exploding with supreme power. In his hand, he held a broken sword that had been broken in half. Along with his appearance, a violent vortex reappeared above the void, and lightning like a dragon descended from the vortex, wrapping around the body of the battle armor. If I am still alive, I will not live in vain. I will destroy everything and bury it for my lord. The battle armor figure roars with a sword, and a pair of true eyes are eager to drip blood. He has been dead for countless years, but he woke up again, waking up in the great wilderness. Novel. Everything that he was familiar with has turned into dry bones, and everything he sees is barren. And the first time he woke up, there was only Jian Wushuang around him, and he naturally regarded Jian Wushuang as an enemy. The eagle dog under the true Wuyang seat? The armor body exclaimed, and his hand cut the sword and pointed it straight down. Jian Wushuang took a half step back, his eyes solemnly said, I have nothing to do with Zhen Wuyang, you admit it wrong. I will never admit my mistake. I can feel his breath in your body. You must be inextricably linked to Zhen Wuyang. The armor roared. Since I am alive, then Zhen Wuyang's I will destroy everything. Jian Wushuang heard a bad cry secretly, and then exploded the power of the fairy body to its peak without any hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. The supreme generative power broke out in this great wilderness where the generative power could not be born. Unexpectedly once again aroused the void vision. The vortexes are converging, and a breath of depressive silence is engulfed. The battle armor figure stood on the road of Xingu, and the body was as high as tens of thousands of feet, full of coercion that could not be seen directly. Then, holding a broken sword in his hand, Shen cut down to Jian Wushuang. Void couldn't withstand this sword, so it began to fall apart with unparalleled weight. Jian Wushuang's eyes were dignified, and he suddenly stomped Xian Bone Road under his feet. With him as the center, a million swords intent rose up instantly at this moment. Purely, the sword intent surrounding the scarlet gold pattern illuminates the void. Wushuang Kendo and Qinjian collided heavily, directly erupting an infinite sound wave. Xianggu Road was even opened up layers of corpses, shattered into powder in the void. And Jian Wushuang piled up in the boundary cracks. Those road blocks that looked like sacred mountains, all turned into a handful of flying ash. Chapter 5105. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign. In other words, everything Jian Wushuang did before was in vain under this first confrontation. A remnant sword was cut down, and even the sword intent of Wushuang Kendo began to quickly collapse. Million Dao Wushuang sword intent can only look at the broken sword that resisted this cut. This battle armor figure with an ancient, desolate, and lonely aura is really terrifying. Just the drop of this sword, all with the aura of the ancient tyrant. Million Dao Wushuang sword intent also suddenly turned into a fan. The remnant sword fell unabated and directly tore out a crack in the Xianggu Road. Jian Wushuang quickly backed away, panting slightly. There was a sound of golden and iron strikes, and only in this first armor on the waist was directly shattered. This battle armor, and the invisible sword surrounded by the Xuanha pattern. Regarding rank for a moment, immortal, and then pierced into the armor-shaped fairy body Jian without any hindrance. Had no chance of winning at all. Yanli erupted only when the emperor's luck is added. His battle armor figure was dull and mortal. But how can the emperor's luck be easily obtained? The emperor's battle hiding in the ring has disappeared, left hand, and the last ray of the true soul of Emperor Wushuang had noticed in the text of Emperor and his figure was ready to flee. Is also in the deepest sleep. It is impossible to provide the emperor with a dead hand, and even if it can provide no effort to rush to the waist, Jian Wushuang today will probably not use it again, but hit because of the emperor's sword that was still on the waist. The damage from overdraft was directly embedded the invisible sword deeply into his waist. The immortal body was born from an armor was the ninth rank creature. Immortal,
and
he
a physique
bear
more
such
profound
pain.
than an
The
ultra-perfect
10,000-meter-long
creature.
body began to
and the
tremble,
immortal body
and then
will
fell
be
backward
transformed
uncontrollably.
with Jian Wuxuang's
Jian
growth.
Wuxuang's eyes
But after
condensed,
using
his
the
heart
emperor's
moved,
luck in the sea
and
of
he
no
silently
edge,
recited
he
Wuxuang's
discovered that
sword
the
art.
immortal
The
body
invisible
actually
sword that had been
contradicted
deeply
the form
embedded in the
emperor's
waist
luck
of the
very
armor
much,
body,
and would be
suddenly
silenced because
exploded
of it.
with an incomparable
Therefore,
Xuanhe pattern
Jian
at this
Wuxuang
moment.
realized that although his
Unparalleled
fairy body
kendo
is
is
like a
like a
container,
container, which
river,
can accommodate
the
and absorb
river-shaped
the
sword
luck of the
intent
godless
is majestic
king.
and surging.
The damage to
with
the
the
fairy
same
body
force
is
as
also
the sky
huge.
and the earth.
Therefore,
At this
Jian
moment,
Wuxuang
in
now
the
can
fairy
only rely
body
on
of
his
his
own
own
strength
armor
to defeat
It
this
completely
armored figure.
exploded.
The
Using
boundless
the
wilderness,
wilderness,
reckless
reckless
as
and
the
vast,
medium, the brilliant
there will not
sword
be any
intent
Yenxian,
cannot be looked
even
at directly,
Dianxian will get
and
involved
finally
here.
converged
He can
into
only
Tianhe.
rely on himself.
Feeling the anomaly
This is
in
the
the immortal
first time
body,
Jian Wuxuang
he half
has
kneeled in
faced
the
the
battle armor
ninth-ranked
figure on the
immortal,
path of the
and
immortal
he is
bone,
from that ancient
roaring
time.
dully.
He has almost
Raising
no
his
chance
palm
of winning,
to draw out the
and the
invisible sword in
possibility
his
of wanting
body.
to escape
Jian
the border
Wuxuang
of the
was
wilderness
startled
is quite low.
and hurriedly released
After
a
all,
million chains of
this great
Yanli chain
wilderness
around
was
his
too
arm,
vast.
trying to
Jian
stop
Wuxuang
it.
didn't think
However,
that rank
between
9
Dian
immortal
and
would
9
not be
ranks
able to catch up with
is an
him.
insurmountable
The remnant
abyss.
sword fell.
How can it be blocked?
Without hurting Jian
This is a
Wuxuang
collision
in a
of
minute,
physical
which
immortal
made
bodies.
the battle armor
The
figure
chain
out
of millions of
surprise.
powers was
He
only
could
clamped
naturally
for a
see that
moment,
Jian
and
Wuxuang
then
was just a little
torn
Yanxian.
apart.
And
Divine
because of
blood
this,
poured
he
out of
didn't put
Jian
it in his
Wuxuang's
eyes.
ears and nose
Unexpectedly,
instantly,
and
the
the
fairy
Wuxuang
body
was
was hit
unscathed.
hard at this
This
moment.
made the armor figure
However,
instantly
Wuxuang
angry,
Kendo was
and
also
his true
completely
eyes were
released
extremely
at this
red.
moment in the body
If
of
I
the battle
recover
armor.
today,
The
all the
towering
eagle
Tianhe
dogs
sword
under
and
the
tent
seat
broke
of
out
Zheng
completely,
Wuliang
will be
and
buried
the
for my
uncountable
lord.
sword
The
intent
vortex
was like
in the
a real
void
sword
exploded
with a
into an
handle,
immense momentum,
rushing and cutting
and the
across the
thunder
fairy
and
body.
lightning like a giant
Even rank
dragon,
9 Dian
all
immortal
penetrated
would
the
never
whole
be
body
able
of
to
the
bear
battle
this
armor,
kind of pain,
making
the
him even
extremely
more
large
unable
body
to
of the
look
battle
directly
armor
at the
instantly
extreme.
sprayed out layers
Then,
of blood
the
mist,
figure of the
and
battle
at the
armor
same
waved
time,
the broken
the
sword in his
inexhaustible
hand
red golden
and cut down
sword
again.
intent pierced his
This
skin,
made Jian Wuxuang
drilled
a
out of
headache
the
to the
fairy,
extreme,
and then
but
burst
he could
open.
only deal with
He
it.
roared in pain,
Facing such
and
a
his
huge
huge
body
behemoth
crashed onto
agility
Xingu
became
Road.
his advantage.
When Duanjin cut down again,
It was the road of
Jian
the bones
Wuxuang's
that was
figure
cast
quietly
from countless
disappeared.
mortal bones.
When his
They
figure
couldn't
appeared
bear
again,
this kind of pressure,
he was already
and
at
they
the
cracked
waist of the
open the
battle
abyss.
armor figure.
The immortal
Jian
body
Wuxuang
with the
shook hands
10,000-meter
with the
figure
extremely
finally
dazzling
crashed into
invisible
the
heart
sword
of the Xingu
and then
Road,
stabbed the weakest
feeling the
part of his
violent
waist
shaking
with
under
all
his
his strength.
feet. Jian Wuxuang gave a light cough, then wiped off the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand. It is impossible for him to erase a 9th-rank Great Yinxian with Wuxuang Sword Dao. Jian Wuxuang didn't believe that the battle armor's figure would die so easily, so he did not relax his vigilance. Chapter 5106. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign. Although the armor figure of the 9th rank Dian Immortal could not die so easily, Wushuang's sword Dao could at least severely damage it. Jian Wushuang slowly ascended into the void, and his gaze then looked at the place where the armor body had fallen. The Xianbone Road was already badly damaged, and one of the potholes reached the level of a bottomless abyss, and even Jian Wushuang could not see the situation. As Xingu Road no longer trembled, everything returned to dead silence. No way, is he really dead? Jian Wushuang was still a little unwilling to believe it, and his figure gradually went into the pothole. However, the next moment, the void suddenly became viscous and stagnated, as if it had become a solid. He was shocked, but his figure was no longer able to move, as if a million chains of qi luck had entangled him, making him unable to move. Then, black smoke quietly rose from the pothole, covering the sky and the sun. Along with the appearance of the black smoke, there was also a body that was as high as 10 million feet. A pair of true eyes are like 2 rounds of blood in the sky, only filled with endless hatred and resentment. Despicable Yanxian, today you will die for Zhen Wuyang first. The battle armor was roaring, and then he stood up from the abyss and slashed towards Jian Wushuang. This sword is full of determination and killing, but Jian Wushuang, who was trapped in his figure, couldn't avoid it at all, and could only watch the sword fall on his fairy body. Sneer. Divine blood spewed out, and Jiutiani Xian burst out with the most brilliant blue meaning, protecting his immortal body from being cut. However, this sword was a full blow from the 9th rank Dian Immortal. Even if Jian Wushuang didn't cut Jian Wushuang into 2, it still broke his meridian every inch and turned it into powder. Jiutiani Xian then dimmed, and Jian Wushuang also fell back and fell quickly like a big sun star about to extinguish. The border barriers have been standing in the great wilderness for countless years, and despite being devastated, they still stand tall. Right now Jian Wushuang, who was falling like a big sun, slammed into the boundary barrier. The boundary barrier is really too vast and magnificent. Even if the millions of celestial planes are added together, they can't be compared at all. Naturally, Jian Wushuang slammed into the boundary barrier and couldn't cause much disturbance. After the bang, a trace of the boundary barrier was knocked out, and Jian Wushuang, who had passed out, fell under the boundary barrier, which happened to be in the middle of the crack in the boundary barrier. Surrounded by the dragon-like thunder and lightning, and the black smoky armor figure slowly got up, and then walked towards the border barrier. He came to the crack in the boundary barrier and looked at Jian Wushuang, whose fairy body was not broken, and doubts arose in his heart. But soon, he directly waved his arm, and the endless gust of wind wrapped Jian Wushuang in a portable manner and blew it into the endless wilderness beyond the boundary barrier. Inside the border barrier, it belongs to the scope of the big division, while outside the border is the real waste. Even the unsatisfied Dian Immortal will get lost in the wilderness. That is a real forbidden place for one party, and there is no immortal involvement, except for certain specific existences. Jian Wushuang, who had passed out, naturally couldn't notice where he was now, and collapsed motionless in the thick dust. The figure of the battle armor was roaring dully, as if to vent the resentment that had existed in the past. He raised his head and stared closely at the magnificent border barrier, as if trying to identify where it was. Why am I here? Is my heaven really broken? As the voice from eternity is full of sorrow, the violence has disappeared. The body shape of the armor is not as terrible as before. Only confusion is left in his eyes, walking aimlessly on this fairy bone road. On the other side, Jian Wushuang, who had passed out in the great wilderness beyond the boundary barrier, was gently picked up by the palm of both hands at this moment. Master, look here. There is actually an immortal in the great wilderness. The still immature voice resounded in the thick dust. Then a dull but majestic voice resounded. Quickly throw it away. It must be a dead body that has long been lost here. No, master, he is still alive. I heard his heart beating. What, it's still alive? How is this possible? As the noisy voice sounded, a total of 6 diamond-like figures appeared in the dust. These 6 Vajra-like figures are all dressed in pure monk clothes,
and will be majestic without anger. And at the center of these 6 figures, there is a little novice monk with red lips and white teeth, and a very smart eyebrow. At this moment, the little novice monk was full of anxiety, and wrapped his thin arms around a figure, not caring that the falling blood wet his monk clothes. Masters, quickly save him. I feel he can still be saved, the little novice said anxiously, looking at the figures. As for the 6-dimensional diamond-like figure, Common glanced at each other, and they all looked awkward. They set foot in the great wasteland, walked out of the great wasteland, and saw countless great crises. Now they have gone through all kinds of obstacles, and walked out of the great wasteland. But when they encountered such a strange thing, they had to be vigilant. Among these figures, one of the most stable and old monk heads frowned slightly, as if he was hesitating. None of the fairy tales, and even Dian celestial creature, was able to survive such severe damage. And it seemed that this young man Yin Xian, who had passed out, seemed to have just experienced a desperate struggle, and it was very likely that he was the source of danger. All the worries had to make the monks hesitate. At this time, the little novice monk became anxious. Didn't you usually say you want to concentrate on doing good? How come you hesitate now? Concentration on goodness also depends on the situation. Hui Qing, you are still young and don't understand this, said the monk with a rough face and thick eyebrows. I'm not young. I've been listening to the sermon for 30 million years, just under the mulberry tree. The little novice monk argued angrily. Master, you are not doing this right. You obviously have the ability to save people, so why not save? Because we don't know him? The steady old monk head, who has not spoken for a while, said helplessly. Okay, Hui Qing, calm down, let's save it. The little novice nodded quickly. Hui Qing thanked Master Father. After deciding to rescue each other, the 6 monks gathered together in the capital. The little novice hurriedly lifted Jian Wushuang, who was still unconscious, in his arms, and placed it in front of the 6 heads of monks. They looked at each other, and then shot together. Huameng with infinite luck appeared one after another, covering Jian Wushuang's body one after another. Obscure and incomprehensible ciphertexts began to appear, and slowly rotated.
Chapter 5107. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign with layers of ciphertext flowing and covering. It was covered with mist-like dust in the wilderness, and began to recede away. And in this extremely dark wilderness of ancient times, a bright color began to appear. Under the joint treatment of the 6 monk heads, Jian Wushuang's state also began to stabilize. The blood was not gushing out, and the broken meridians began to repair quickly. The immortal body was originally the supreme physique against the sky. After being protected, it recovered almost at a speed visible to the naked eye. After seeing Jian Wushuang's terrifying recovery speed, the steadily old monk head, who has become the master father, couldn't help but be surprised. Earlier he felt that Jian Wushuang, who had passed out, was no different from a dead body. There was no breath in his body, and his body had been broken into powder, and even Xianyuan had disappeared. How can such a body be saved? Unexpectedly, but only a few dozen breaths of time passed. He has already recovered, and he can even breathe weakly. The 6 monk heads were naturally aware of this situation, and after seeing each other, they were a little surprised and disbelieved. Could it be that what we saved was really a shocking arrogance? The great elder was a little puzzled, and at the same time the vigilance in his heart slowly receded, because he didn't feel any uncomfortable breath from Jian Wushuang's body. After a few hundred breaths of time, the 6 monk heads stopped at the same time, and then the master and father proceeded to explore Jian Wushuang's breath. "How about master? Are you out of danger?" Little novice Huiqing asked nervously. The master nodded, then retracted his palm and said, "It's not a major problem, and I'm recovering very well. It seems I will wake up soon." The monk with a rough face and thick eyebrows was quite exclaimed. "This is really a miracle. It was so badly damaged in the Great Famine that it still survived. This is not easy." The master put his hands together. "Good, saving his life is a good fate. I hope that all the immortals will no longer suffer from the Great Famine." At this time, there was also a rather thin, clean-faced monk head, frowning slightly and said, "Brother, we have all passed through the great wilderness now, and we should be in the realm of the Great Division in front of us. There should be no great crisis anymore. But why is there still a very strong and manic killing intent here?" The master did not speak, but slowly turned around and looked at the direction of Desiyu. There was an extremely dark void that was almost connected to the great wilderness. There was no big sun-shining star, and there was no celestial plane. Some are just border barriers that can't be looked directly at or spoken. The border barrier was too magnificent and vast, almost isolating everything and protecting the big division well. The master frowned slightly, his eyes revealed doubts. Could it be that the murderous aura came from the Great Division? Immediately afterwards, facing the rough, thick eyebrows, the monk head said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid this murderous aura is also inseparable from this kid. Do you want to wake him up and ask?" "No, he is still recovering, so I can't treat him like this." Little novice Huiqing hurriedly protected Jian Wushuang. The master said calmly, "We have all walked through the desperate wilderness, so why are we afraid of these killing intents?" Another monk with a 3-flowered seal between his eyebrows nodded and said, "Big brother is right. How can a mere killing intent stop us? This time we come, we must find other senior brothers. Finding them is not the goal. What we have to do is to realize the process. We can get out of the Great Famine, and it is not ourselves." After speaking these last words, the master turned and walked in the direction of Desiyu. The other monk heads also followed closely. Facing the rugged monk with thick eyebrows and big eyes, said, "Huiqing, since he is no longer a serious problem, we will leave him here. We have more important things to do." The little novice Huiqing shook his head and said, "No 3 masters, he is still in a coma, and he will definitely lose his life if he is thrown into this great wasteland. I think he must be an immortal in the Daisai domain, so it is better to bring him back to the Daisai domain. In it." Seeing persuasion not to move, he had to give up. A group of monk heads walked out of the great wilderness and walked towards the Great Division. The killing karma is too heavy. No wonder the killing intent is so strong. This big division is really not a paradise. Stepping on the road of immortal bones, made of countless immortal corpses, a crowd of monks frowned. They saw that everything that was cast in the great wilderness was a fairy bone. These celestial bones used to be a celestial being who had the ability to penetrate the sky and the earth. But now, they have lost everything and stood miserably in the wilderness for endless years. Stepping on the endless bones of immortals, a group of immortals have already come to the border barrier. Is this the passage opened by the predecessors? It is really a person with great perseverance. Facing the rugged monk with thick eyebrows and eyes, he exclaimed, and then folded his hands together. Indeed, it is already unthinkable to be able to break such a vast border barrier through a gap. Well, we have to go now, there is still a long way, we are all focused. After the master said, he walked into the border barrier. However, the thin little novice Huiqing, carrying Jian Wushuang on his back, hung at the back of the masters. The border barrier is so magnificent to the extreme, it takes quite a long way to reach the Desai domain. Headed by the master father, the team moved forward in the shape of a product. All around them, there was a faint radiant light of Buddha shrouded in them, to protect them. They all looked solemn, and seemed to be quietly prepared to respond. Brother, do you feel that your blood is getting stronger and stronger? How can it be that this great wilderness will remain the same forever? And even the power of growth can't be produced at all. How can it be possible to retain blood? At this time the little novice Huiqing, who carried Jian Wushuang on his back, raised his head and said very seriously, "But Master San, I also feel a powerful, very clear vitality approaching us." As soon as Huiqing's words came out, all the monks' faces became slightly solemn, and they looked up at the deserted surroundings. Be careful and vigilant. We have already walked out of the great wilderness. How can we be blocked from the great division? Grand Master frowned, his eyes solemn. At this moment Jian Wushuang, who had been in a coma, slowly awakened. Huiqing noticed that Jian Wushuang was awakening behind him, and was very happy. "Ah, are you awake? How fast?" He was at a loss first, looking at the strange monks in front of him, and combining the previous things, he quickly realized something. "Yes, you saved me? Of course, but don't take it seriously. This is what we should do." Chapter 5108. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign Little Novice Huiqing smiled and said. The kindness in his eyes was like a clear spring, pure to the extreme. Saving the life of a benevolent person is also a practice for us. A great kindness. Jian Wushuang's frowned brows slowly stretched, and then solemnly thanked him. Huiqing smiled again. I really don't need to thank you. If you must thank you, thank my masters for saving you. He nodded solemnly, and then as if he realized something he asked. You guys are from the world of Tongtian Buddha? You, how do you know? Huiqing opened her eyes wide and looked at him incredulously. However, just when he wanted to say more, a monk turned his head and shouted with a solemn expression. Enough, Huiqing, don't say much. Huiqing was startled and nodded quickly, shutting up. It wasn't until the monk turned around that he lowered his voice and said, I can't say too much. The masters are very strict with me. Jian Wushuang nodded, then walked away from Huiqing's thin back. He looked around, and soon realized that it was extremely familiar here, and he was secretly surprised. You have come to the border. As soon as these words came out, all the monk capitals stopped and stared at Jian Wushuang like a glaring King Kong, as if they were ready to do anything. But Jian Wushuang didn't care about their gazes and shouted anxiously, Leave soon. If you don't leave, it will be too late. The boundary has changed. The master's brow furrowed, his eyes fixed on Jian Wushuang, as if trying to figure out the truth or falsehood of his words. And at this moment, a body that was as high as 10,000 meters, with the killing intent to obscure the void, quietly stood on the edge of the boundary barrier. Those red eyes, almost crazy and paranoid, looked at the monk heads with boundless anger. Jian Wushuang was the first to discover the existence of the battle armor figure, and shouted anxiously, Go! He is here. But it's too late. The killing intent that was enough to obscure the void swept across in an instant, and the 10 million meter thousand foot body of the battle armor also blasted fiercely. A huge remnant sword, tearing through the void, slashing down. A group of monk heads also noticed in an instant, and they shot at the same time without thinking. The extremely dazzling Buddha's light is accompanied by the power, and at this moment, it completely blooms with endless light, and forms an enchantment to resist that sword. A sword tore through the void, sinking down with endless killing intent. The gloomy remnant sword of blood slashed on the barrier, and the face of the Master Father, who was the first to face the brunt, suddenly changed, and then directly spit out the blood of the gods. The situation of the other 5 monk heads was not good. All of them were spit out a mouthful of divine blood, and their breath instantly wilted. And the Buddha light barrier was also instantly fragmented. Master! Huiqing shouted out of color. Jian Wushuang gritted his teeth, and directly released more than a dozen power trainings. After wrapping around the waists of a group of monk heads, he suddenly pulled them out of the range where the sword was cut. Boom! Xiangu Road instantly shattered a crack of millions of feet, and the immortal bones that had never been transformed have become fans. Under the dust of the sky, the heads of monks who were able to escape from the danger were pale, and their eyes filled with incredible expressions. Jian Wushuang gasped slightly. Go fast, don't stop, go as far as you go. All the monks in the capital did not speak, but looked at the calm Master Father. Immediately afterwards he spoke, already making a decision. No, you can't take a step back. When we came here, we can't take a step back. Jian Wushuang was stunned, unable to speak for a while. Earlier, he felt that the strength of these monk heads was very terrifying. Except for a little novice, all were in the realm of Dian Immortal. Such a group of terrifying existences, even one, are terrifying existences capable of destroying countless universes. But there is something more terrifying than them. That is the figure of the battle armor, who has already entered the realm of the 9th-ranked Dian Immortal. He came from that ancient time. He has fallen asleep to this day, and awakened from his long sleep, with an endless violent killing intent, an unimaginable existence. This is simply a very unequal battle. Facing such a 9th-ranked Dian Immortal, the 6 heads of monks are just looking for death. You figured it out, he is rank 9 Dian Immortal. Jian Wushuang frowned and reminded, even if it is rank 9,
We can only move forward, not retreat. The master said in a deep voice. His eyes swept to the other monk heads. A group of monks in the capital nodded slightly, facing a 9th-ranked Dayan immortal who had come out of the Wangu era. They did not even have the slightest intention to retreat. Are you crazy? Do you know what the 9th rank represents? Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. It's like sending you to death. Even if you die, you can't retreat. Grand Master said calmly. Facing the figure of the armor that came, he greeted him. It belongs to the unique power light wheel of rank 6 Dayan Immortal, and at this moment it blooms pure Buddha light power. Every time he took a step, the treasure face behind him solidified a bit. With his footsteps, the other 5 monk heads did not hesitate at all, and moved forward firmly. One person has 6 turns and 5 has 3 turns. Facing the figure of the battle armor, who had already climbed into the 9th rank, Chi released his pure Buddha light. Are you all crazy? Jian Wushuang looked at this scene in disbelief. Knowing that it was a mortal situation, why did he seek death? At this time, the little novice monk Huiqing, who had not spoken, seemed to have made a decision and moved forward with firm eyes. But before he could take 2 steps, Jian Wushuang was pulled back with his collar. Are you going to die? Huiqing was grabbed by the collar and argued blushingly. Good man, please let me go. This is a decision I made with the masters, and will never change. Jian Wushuang said angrily. Your masters are going to die. Instead of stopping you, you want to die with them? What stupid decision did you make? Huiqing flushed and continued to argue. We are not going to die. The great wasteland is so terrible that we have all walked over. How can we fall on the border of Desiyu? Jian Wushuang looked solemnly. I tell you, do you know what they are aware of? It's like a chasm, and there is no way to make it up. He opened his mouth and still stubbornly said, Good man, please respect our decision, and please put me down. This is disrespect to the monk. Looking at the bean sprouts like little novice monk, Jian Wu was solemn on both sides, and then solemnly said, I don't care about these monks or not. Since you saved me, I will never see you die. Saving a group is saving. Saving one is also saving. Huiqing opened his mouth slightly. For some reason, the obsession in his heart was loosened at this moment. And this is the first time he has had doubts since he had enlightened him for 30 million years.
Chapter 5109. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign. There is no mulberry tree under the Enlightenment for 30 million years, which has strengthened Huiqing's Buddha heart. The purity and firmness of his heart made everyone who saw him sigh like a Buddha. He has never had a stage of doubt, and even any passage of scripture cannot confuse him. But now, facing such a big life and death situation, facing a young man Yanxian with firm eyes and the same purity, facing the startling question he issued, for the first time, Huiqing couldn't hold on to her heart. Could it be that the actions of the masters are wrong? Shouldn't they make such a decision? But my other masters, in order for us to be able to get out of the Great Wasteland, have already died in the Great Wasteland. If we return, how can we be worthy of them? After asking big questions, Huiqing could no longer remain calm. He was stunned on the spot, not knowing what to plan. Seeing that Huiqing was no longer impulsive, Jian Wushuang let go of him and turned to look at the situation where he had fallen into a battle. He frowned. At this moment, a small hand quietly grabbed the corner of his clothes and said in a trembling voice, Good man. You said that saving one is saving. Saving a group is also saving, and will save my master. Are you?" Jian Wushuang turned around, looked at this little novice who still had some timidity in his eyes, and nodded his head. "Since I have said it, I will do it, but I may not be able to save them all. Then there will be a good worker." The little novice Huiqing folded her hands, and then looked at the masters who were in a battle in the void, and finally couldn't bear it. After making the decision, Jian Wushuang raised his palm subconsciously and touched Huiqing's bare head. He reacted instantly, his face turned red, and he quickly apologized, then turned and rushed into the void without any hesitation. Huiqing pursed her mouth, then subconsciously twisted her bare head. "What? I must save my master. Border barriers. The void has been shattered and torn apart by the supreme derivation power, and the escaping derivation power has formed the most violent supreme vortex. A series of thunder and lightning as thick as a dragon, raging in the vortex, and then violently shot down. The boundary of the big division has been completely chaotic. All kinds of colorful divine blood spilled, because it was too pure to fall, hovering in the void, making the battlefield more tragic. The figure of the battle armor, that is as high as tens of thousands of meters, has completely fallen into violent madness. At this moment, the 6 monk heads are in a more miserable situation, relying on their physical advantages to barely deal with them. The gap between them is too unimaginable, like a chasm. Even if the treasures came out together, it would not cause much damage to the armor body. Once boarded the Dian Immortal, every major turn in it could not be compensated by any means. At the moment, among the 6 monk heads, there is only one 6th ranked Dian Immortal. How can he fight the 9th rank? This is also something Jian Wushuang can't understand. Wielding a broken sword that can cause heavy damage to Dian Immortal with every sword, the figure of the battle armor roared. "All Zhen Wiang's eagle dogs will be buried for my lord." Above the sky, the calm and old master father almost relied on his own power to withstand most of the offensive of the armor figure. And the precious appearance behind him had already dimmed to the extreme, and it seemed that it might disappear at any time. A series of extremely bright magic arts guarded him, and at the same time attracted most of the offensive of the armor figure. With a sword cut horizontally, Qin Jian directly blasted hundreds of magic formulas, including the Master Father. Moreover, the remnant sword was cast down unabated. Once it hits, even if he is rank 6 Dian Immortal, he will definitely die instantly. "Brother!" The other 5 monk heads yelled, but they had no time to give aid, so they could only watch the sword fall. The next moment, a figure quietly appeared under the remnant sword, and then raised the sword to respond. Zhang, the big sound of gold and iron strikes through the eternal void, and the extremely pure sword intent is also sprayed out, so that the extremely dark void is reflected. All monks' eyes were rounded, and looked at this scene in disbelief. That Xiao Zhao Yangxian, who had fallen into the wilderness like a blood man before, almost knew his life and death, at this moment, used his own power to resist a sword. You know, that sword is the sword of rank 9 Dian Immortal. But this scene actually happened, Time seemed to stand still, and Jian Wushuang's brows trembled slightly under that sword. His right hand holding the invisible sword was already shattered, and the blood of God was spilled into the void. If it weren't for the terrifying defensive power of the immortal body, I'm afraid this sword would be able to make Jian Wushuang shatter into dust. But he still did it, facing up against the full force of the 9th-ranked Dayan Immortal. The figure of the battle armor was also shocked, as if he had seen something impossible. You are not dead. Jian Wushuang pressed his eyebrows and quickly threw a D-pin pill in his mouth, thinking, it's not that easy to miss me. Then I will let you die again. The armor was furious, and at the same time, he wanted to raise his left hand and hit him. But at this moment, the 6 monk heads shot at the same time, a total of 6 pure Buddha light chains, layered around the left hand of the armor figure, making it difficult for him to lift it for a while. Good man, go. The master yelled loudly with a solemn expression. Jian Wushuang naturally didn't stay too much, and his figure instantly disappeared under broken sword. However, when he appeared again, he was in front of all the monk heads. Leave quickly and leave it to me, he said in a condensed voice, showing his unquestionable majesty. Facing this young man who was just a fairy, all the monk heads did not underestimate it. They looked at each other, then looked at the master and father together. The Grand Master's expression was firm. Although hesitated in his eyes, he quickly disappeared. You can't retreat, you can only move forward. Can't you see where the situation is now? Do you want to die here? Jian Wushuang shouted in a deep voice. The master looked at him. Even so, we can't retreat. We will never retreat into the wilderness. Even if we die, we will die in the big division territory. Boom! When they talked, the battle armor figure slashed down with a sword, directly dispersing all the monk capitals. Jian Wushuang could not help but curse an idiot secretly. At this time the master said again, My brothers, I will open the way for you, and go to see you. As his voice fell, a treasure phase condensed from pure Buddha's light, reflecting the emptiness. The injuries on the master's father's immortal body all recovered, as well as his luck in an instant. Layers of hazy Buddha light ciphertexts flowed slowly around him, as if the moon was setting and the sun was rising. His hands clasped together. A pair of true eyes released the supreme true power. The fairy body and the treasure image seemed to be completely integrated at this moment. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.